All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kyle Stone, and I call the October 25th, 2023 Park Authority Board meeting to order. Virginia law authorizes the remote participation of board members, provided that a policy exists to ensure that such remote participation is consistently administered. This board has approved policy 111. Any such remote attendance must be approved by the board as long as a physical quorum of the board is actually present. Voice of the remote participant is able to be heard by everyone in the room, and the remote participation comports with the policy. Verification that the remote participant's voice is clear. Well, I don't need to actually read that part. There is one member participating remotely tonight. That's Ron Kendall, and he's received preliminary approval. Mr. Kendall, are you connected to this meeting remotely?
Yes, I am remotely from my home in Mason District.
Oh, in our nightly annual audio.
Can you hear me?
Should just be able to hit guest services. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Not Dean.
Did I try coming in again?
Ron, can you talk again?
Yes. Can you hear me at all?
Dang it.
One day this will work. I wonder if
First
the
time.
volume
One
might
day it'll work the first time. Anything?
not working.
Can you talk again, please, Ron?
Yes, I'm trying. I'll keep talking until you can hear me.
It's strange that it works
I can hear you
early in the
fine.
day.
How about now?
Should we do that?
Why don't you see if Jay, why don't you see if Jay can talk and see if it's Ron or.
Yeah, see if Jay can talk.
I can talk. Can you hear me?
You're talking fine.
We can't hear herself off mute.
Okay. All right. We're gonna restart on our end. We'll be back up in a minute.
Are we supposed to log off, Ron?
I have no idea. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Just
We're the COVID club.
It's just, I could talk to you and you could talk to them. I don't know.
I also hear both of you, by the way.
Hey, Ryan.
Hi.
I think it was just, I think it's their audio that's off.
It should be a button, right? Like,
It's more complicated than a button. How you feeling, Ron?
well, I'm fine. I keep testing positive though. It's really pain in the ass.
I just stopped testing positive.
Hmm?
I had COVID too.
Oh yeah. I had to go to Europe to get it. So
I was out all last week. And
Yeah.
so this is my last quarantine day. And so didn't want to be sitting in the room with everybody.
yeah,
Back
but
tomorrow.
it's not over.
Yeah.
Seems like this one is like a 2-weeker.
Brain is just foggy.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've been fine. I've had low congestion. a cough. That's it.
Oh no, I was laid out last week.
Oh.
Laid out. It was bad.
So you're back. Are you back?
It's not me right now, and I'm connected.
All right, let's try again.
Yes,
Yeah.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Turn it off and on. Always press.
All right. I'm gonna take this back to the top just to make sure we're official. I'm gonna start the motion again. Virginia law authorizes the remote participation of board members, provided that a policy exists to ensure that such remote participation is consistently administered. This board has approved policy 111. Any such remote attendance must be approved by the board as long as a physical quorum of the board is actually present. Voice of the remote participant is able to be heard by everyone in the room, and the remote participation comports with the policy. We have one member participating remotely tonight. That's Ron Kendall. He has received preliminary approval. Ron, are you connected to this meeting remotely?
I am connected to the meeting remotely from my home in Mason District.
Thank you. I move that Mr. Kendall's voice may be adequately heard in this location. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Second motion, pursuant to the Park Authority's Policy 111 for remote participation in public meetings, I move that Mr. Ron Kendall be permitted to participate remotely in this meeting because it comports with the policy we adopted and a physical quorum is present here at the Park Authority Boardroom, 9th floor, Harity Building.
Second motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Now get started with today's business, and Abner, that's you.
Hi, everyone. I call the Resource Management Committee to order. We have a presentation.
Wonderful. Good afternoon, good evening. I guess good evening at the show. Good evening, everyone. My name is Laura Graves. I'm the Resource Management Division Director. We're very happy to have John Burke, our Natural Resource Management Branch Manager, share an overview in our annual report of our Natural Resource Management Plan and programming that has been happening over this last year, and talk a little bit about what we're planning to implement this current fiscal year. So with that, I will turn it over to John and thank him and his team for all the hard work that they've done.
Good evening, everyone. I'd just like to point out and share with you all that today represents the 50th anniversary of Fairfax County Commission. So I invite you all to go across the street to the government center and look at the ellipse back there, and you'll notice 50 trees around the ellipse now representing 50 years of that work. Next. We have representation on that group that happened for quite a long time. It's nice to see that all come together. So thanks for having
John,
me. Yes.
can you move the mic? I'm just hearing that the folks online can't hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, that should be better. Thanks for having me this evening. I feel like I've been talking to you all a lot of these past few meetings, so it's nice to be able to speak with you again. Today, we're going to be talking about the annual report for the Natural Resource Management Plan, which is carried out by the Natural Resource Branch, as well as other groups and partners in Park Authority, including Natural Resource Site Managers and our interpretive sites as well. But if we look at the plan itself, I know you've seen this quite a few times. As I presented to you in the past, these are the tenets of our natural resource plan. This is for our FCPA-wide natural resource plan, which will be updated this year as part of our new activities. And you'll notice in this list, we have a new tenet down at the bottom, sustain and maintain. That's going to be added to the natural resource plan to capture the natural resource needs work that we're doing now. It may have a slightly different need, but for all intents and purposes, it's going to follow along those lines. So this presentation is going to follow this order here. We have different programs that represent different tenants here, but we have certain programs that do more than another within a given tenant. So I'm going to talk about those programs, the staff, the funding for those programs, what they've accomplished, and then what we intend to accomplish in this fiscal year. So the inventory and planning program is made up of 2 full-time staff members and like 1/1560 part-time staff. Okay, oh yeah, no worries. Should we try that too?
They're having trouble hearing you. Okay.
All right.
Sorry.
Okay, so the inventory and planning programs, we have 2 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee, 15-60 hour week ecologist. And this program does, as the name states, the inventory work for the park authority, letting us know what we have on all of our various parks from a natural resources perspective. So the funding for that program varies from year to year. However, currently it's tied to our regional natural resource management plans and some general fund funding for salaries. So typically around $200,000 per year. That program will also engage with consultants and contractors to do specialized work for things like wood turtle surveys, insect surveys, things like that. And sometimes funding for those projects comes from different sources. So as far as what we've accomplished, and the inventory and planning program is one group, and a lot of folks contribute to this overall effort. But the biggest one, 1,410 acres of natural vegetation. That is in support of our natural resources management plans, our regional plans, and is consistent with numbers that we've been able to log over the years. Those are our ecologists going out in the field and finding rare natural communities of plants, including state and local records, as well as some rare plants within our communities. On top of that, as you all know, we partner with the police and in deer control and Canada geese management on parklands. As part of that, we want to make sure that we're managing these populations responsibly, and specifically for deer, we can no longer do camera trap surveys because of chronic wasting disease, but we can continue our growl surveys, which gives us an idea of the population of deer within various parks. And you can see here, we've continued that this year. You'll note that
We can still use game cameras, we just can't bait,
we
right?
can't bait, right? That's part of the structure of that type of stuff. But correct, yeah, we can no longer bait for deer because of chronic wasting disease. The continued survey work is also, as I mentioned, associated with looking for rare plants and natural communities. So you can see we've found 10 rare plant occurrences in the last fiscal year. We've also documented 3 rare species of bats as part of the acoustic survey work that this group does. And then tied in with this effort is also a permit review sort of group. And essentially what that does is allows the inventory group to look where permitted requests take place and then overlap what rare resources we might have there to determine if it's appropriate use for that site, usually related to natural resource management or a natural use permit. So planting permits, things like that. All right, so our Protecting Natural Capital group is made up of 1 full-time ecologist, and this is essentially our plan review group. So the funding for that program is made up from our general fund and is about $150,000 per year to cover salary and benefits. And the intent of this program is to review public works projects, park authority projects, and also projects on or neighboring to park authority that might impact natural resources. We try to avoid, minimize, protect, and mitigate potential impacts to our natural resources. And it's this ecologist's job to make sure that each of those plan sets are gone over with a fine-tooth comb, and that prescriptive recommendations or requirements can be made to developers so that we can avoid, mitigate, protect, and minimize impacts to our natural resources. So you can see here the number of projects that ecologist has been engaged in. This number is relatively low this year because he's a relatively new employee to the team. I can tell you right now, this number is a lot higher as of this fiscal year. We continue to get plan reviews in place, and we continue to get pulled into projects both within Park Authority as well as other groups who are engaging us to ensure that their proposed ideas for things like stream restorations or pond retrofits aren't going to impact our natural resources in an unnecessarily deleterious or negative way. So we're happy to continue to be part of those programs and happy to continue to have oversight to development projects on or adjacent to the Park Authority property. The managing wild populations and restoring ecosystems. This program is mostly captured under the Helping Our Land Heal program, and this program is made up of 2 full-time ecologists and 2 part-time ecologists. Funding from this program comes primarily from the park bonds, usually pulling around $300,000 a year, sometimes more depending on the projects. You'll also note that this program also utilizes the old Colchester Fund, which we came to you last month to discuss. And so funding for Old Colchester, some of that goes to this program to implement studies and restorations at that site from a natural resources perspective. So you'll notice other things in here related to wildlife, and that's because under this tenant, we also mentioned managing wild populations, including wildlife. So you'll see a few of those sprinkled in, like the number of white-tailed deer harvested, again, in partnership with the police, as well as the number of Canada goose nests soiled. And those actually happen under our inventory and planning program. They liaise with the police for those programs. However, they are types of wildlife population management, so I include them here for that reason. We do quite a bit of invasive plant treatment, not only through this program, but also through the IMA program, which I'll discuss later on in the presentation. And this is the main program that implements prescribed fire, an extremely useful ecological management tool on parkland. So we're really appreciative of the continued support for that measure and tool for managing our ecosystems. It's extremely useful, extremely cost effective. And we were able to burn 65 acres last year under this program. Now, believe it or not, that's relatively low for a prescribed burn metric. And that simply relates to the weather last year. The weather doesn't cooperate. We can't burn as many parks. So we're hoping to get a lot more this year. I know the burn team is real fired up and feel part of the fun to get more in the ground and get going. So I expect that we'll get some more burns, but they'll be conducted, safely and efficiently. And then below, you'll see an ongoing list of restorations that are either in progress or started or about to be wrapped up under the Helping Our Land Heal program. Thank you again for approving the Mason District, Huntley Meadows, and Oakmar reforestation projects that we proposed to you in a few months back. Those will be executed under this program, and we're looking forward to getting started in the scoping and site prep phase of those projects this year. I think I froze. Oh, there we go. All right, so as usual, I'd like to show a few pictures of some of the work we're doing. Typically, this encompasses the restoration program, and now it also encompasses the work of the Landscape Legacy program. This is Oak Lick Preserve. This restoration is about to be completed as far as the 5-year implementation phase is concerned. This is a forest restoration in Oak Lick Preserve, and I'm highlighting this portion here because it shows our herbivory control for this site, which is an electric fence. And you'll notice the nice clearing that's going on there between the fence lines. That's the work and the continued collaboration between the Helping Our Land Heal program and the newly created Landscape Legacy program. So as these restorations are completed, there'll be some components that are left in the ground for a number of years to ensure their long-term success. Things like fences will be one of those things. The Landscape Legacy is set up to make sure that those facilities, installations, modifications to the environment are maintained appropriately so that we can have long-term success with these types of restorations. Here at Huntley Meadows, you'll see some more work that occurred this year. This was part of the ditch plug effort that the Helping Our Land Heal program engaged in, essentially looking to establish coastal plain depression swamps in Huntley Meadows, or rather reestablish them, as this park was ditched at some point in history. We dammed those ditches up. We'll let the water reflood those areas, and we'll naturally select for the types of plants that natural community would have had 200 years ago. So that work was relatively simple to implement, and it's still in the implementation and study phase. We're still doing some more work at Huntley Meadows. We have plans for one of the ponds there at that site, but our 4-legged engineer, Beaver, is doing a lot of the work for us. So we're kind of at a wait and see phase for one element of it at least. And then Poplar Ford, this is one of our largest restorations, not one of our oldest, but certainly one of our oldest large-scale meadow restorations. And we continue to grow this project. I bring Poplar Ford, this beautiful picture of an aster here before you, because it represents funding that comes from other sources other than the park bond. So Poplar Ford is in many instances or many acre and a lot of the acreage of it, excuse me, is funded by the EIP program, the Environmental Improvement Program. And that coupled with park bond allows us to really cover a lot of ground and restore a lot of acreage in this old farm field here. As portions of this farm field exit the implementation phase of the Helping Our Land Heal program, it'll then enter the long-term maintenance phase where it will have routine mows, routine burns, and then spot treatments here and there. We'll probably also be localizing some herbivory control measures at this park as well to ensure the long-term success of this site. The fostering stewardship and expanding natural capital. This tenant is best captured under our flagship program, IMA, the Invasive Management Area Program. And this represents the largest invasive plant control volunteer program in Northern Virginia, but also certainly within Park Authority in Fairfax County. So this program receives $450,000 a year in funding from the EIP program. That's that environmental improvement program I mentioned that also supports our other efforts. It is made up of 1 full-time ecologist, 2 part-time ecologists, and then 2 interns. So we engage with about 79 site leaders per year, who in turn engage with thousands of volunteers to remove invasive plants on parkland. Other elements of our stewardship and expanding natural capital efforts include the volunteer hours associated with the deer management program, as well as addressing customer inquiries. So 75 is a relatively low number because customer inquiries can be emails, phone calls, or just folks pulling me aside or pulling staff aside as we walk into the park. So that's a really hard number to lock down. We do our best to try and put a number there, but really it's probably much higher. We also have quite a few partnerships with different agencies, and we had a great conversation with the University of Maryland, who's going to help us get a tighter lock on the natural capital assessment per acre and depending on natural community type of parkland. They have a great undergraduate program there that is looking for new projects to do to help out localities and also flex the muscles of students when it comes to GIS and analysis. So we're really looking forward to hopefully establishing a solid partnership. I would just also like to point out that the 22,000 hours that volunteers removed non-native invasive plants, I've probably said it before, but we are now past 100,000 hours of volunteer time with the IMA program. I think we're around 130,000 hours now total. So we hit that mark last year, but I'm just going to use this opportunity to tally it again, even though we're already past it, because it's such a big milestone. And then, of course, supporting FCPA's investments in natural capital. This is the Landscape Legacy and Sustainability Program. So thank you once again for helping support establishing this program. I think it's really going to help the future of Park Authority's natural resources and really to establish the restorations that we put in the ground. This program receives roughly $450,000 a year and is made up of 3 full-time ecologists. Their main role, as I stated before, will be to maintain completed restorations after the 5-year bond implementation period. So we made some big strides this year with this program. We've established a new office at the Lewinsville House at Lewinsville Park. So I encourage you all to check it out. We have ecologists working out of there all week. And if you'd like to make a visit, I'd be happy to go with you and introduce you to our new ecologists. They're a great crew. They spent all day today working on an elk lick, that restoration we talked about, doing a competition exclusion study. So basically removing smaller volunteer trees so that the ones we planted aren't competing for sunlight, essentially, or slower growing oaks trying to compete with, say, faster sycamores, tulip poplars, or red buds, things like that. And the program will also carry the torch, so to speak, with the prescribed burn program by conducting prescribed burns on completed restorations. So there's going to be a lot of collaboration between the Helping Our Land Heal program and the Landscape Legacy program to pass that knowledge on and hand these projects off. This fiscal year, we've already engaged in a lot of this stuff, but we will continue to establish protocols for this transition. We're going to establish treatment plans for our various restorations long-term. And we're going to implement other activities, as I mentioned, prescribed burn, but also continued fencing, installation, and maintenance to exclude deer, and also establishing floristic monitoring protocols so that we can see how these restorations are changing and evolving and adapting over time as we implement various maintenance activities. Also in FY 24, more broadly, we're going to expand the operation at the Lewinsville House, probably mostly in the interior, getting it set up to be more appropriate for our maintenance program. So you can see there in the upper left, that's how it started. But now we have a fully fleshed out office there for folks to work comfortably and happily. So now we're going to make sure we got room for tools and all that good stuff inside as well, while being responsible and respectful of the historic nature of the property. We also are looking to implement the $400,000 in third quarter carryover bamboo funding and begin managing bamboo more aggressively on parkland in partnership with neighboring landowners to comply with the Fairfax County running bamboo ordinance. We'll complete writing of the Northern Area Natural Resource Management Plan. We will utilize the $100,000 in funding from urban forestry to remove tree of heaven in various parks for spotted lanternfly mitigation. And then we will begin our field work for the Central Area Natural Resources Management Plan, consulting with state biologists and also working with our own botanists to inventory all the good stuff that we have on our property in the central area of the county. So I would just like to take the opportunity, like I did last year, to highlight the faces of the Natural Resources Branch. And similar to last year where we had a burn picture, this is not just the Natural Resource Branch, but it's made up of our partners and colleagues that also help implement our Natural Resource Management Plan, either the broader Natural Resource Management Plan or site-specific Natural Resource Management Plans, like our naturalists at Riverbend, Holly Meadows, Green Spring Gardens, and other sites. Not only that, as we continue to engage with our site staff, we're also going to continue to engage with our volunteers who also play a super key role in helping make sure that our Natural Resource Management Plan comes to fruition. So thank you all, and I'll take questions.
Thank you, John. Yeah, Ron is ready with a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure when we do start our bamboo removal or remediation, that we're gonna get that data as a separate line item, not lumped in with all the other invasives, because that's of particular interest. So when we get from the get-go, I'd like to be sure the data is collected separately, or at least tabulated separately.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've developed a prioritization protocol for selection of those projects, and it may be adapted over time. But in essence, I'm treating it like a separate program because the funding just for that bamboo is basically the same amount as one of our other whole programs received. So we'll be treating it essentially like a whole new program. And yeah, we'll provide that those metrics as a separate line item.
Other questions?
Just a comment and then a couple of questions. It's all good information, but it's all what we're doing. And it'd be good in future reports to get a little sense of context of how we're doing compared to what our goals are in this realm. And then the questions I have are all related to the Word document that was in the board package before the presentation itself. So like in the National Resource Management Plan Program section, you had a bullet in there for beginning agency-wide list of potential mitigation sites. So those will be potentially new sites to be in the Helping Our Land Heal program.
That refers to it as an ongoing initiative to establish mitigation funding for development.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Sorry, but it says begin an agency-wide list.
We still haven't established it.
In the inventory and planning section, there's a bullet in there. Parklands will be resurveyed approximately every 10 years. Is that a number based on what we'd like it to be, best practice, or based on the funding available?
Our funding would allow that. I think 10 years. Is that regarding invasive plant survey, NIP, or are you talking about the regional?
I don't know. I didn't type out the full bullet for myself. So I don't know what the whole thing said. I think it was more general than just invasives. So I was wondering if it was related to like those 4 regional plans.
Yeah, that would be the optimistic idea.
Okay.
10 years. The NNIP.
But is 10 years what we would want for a data collection standpoint, and manpower and staffing and money probably pushes it back? Or is 10 plus years still okay?
I think for certain areas, we would probably identify these, like, so our resource-based parks, for example, would be one example. We want to get out there more frequently. And because we have active management of those sites, that would be incorporated into that. The 10 years would be for the regional natural resource surveys, and that would be funding dependent, certainly. It's an optimistic threshold just because that level of survey work is, we don't see that elsewhere unless you're looking at a much smaller site. What we do see is the 6-year turnaround for the NIEP, the invasive plant surveys. We're able to accomplish that. We were able to accomplish that in the first 6 years. The second 6 years have been slower, though. I think it might have been maybe related to COVID, but we're optimistic that 6 years is still realistic for invasive plants for forested parts. The 10 years, the 10 years is not sufficient for some of our higher value parks when it comes to natural resources.
So we would, in an ideal world, no constraints on staffing and dollars. We would want it to be a tighter band than once every 10 years.
Yes, but but that would require.
Yeah, I get. I just wanted to get an understanding of if you put 10 years down because that's the best we could do based on current kind of funding model, or if we did do it every 10 years, that's enough. It's not too much time in between that you're losing potential insight.
Yes, it's based on the staffing.
Okay.
So for the Landscape Legacy Program, as an example, they have a monitoring protocol that we're working on together now to have them monitor, do essentially the same thing that our botanists are doing for the restorations twice a year. So we'll be doing a generalized natural community and forest quality survey at one point in the year, and then they're going to come through and look at transects and plots so we can get a more objective view of how the natural community is changing based on their activities. And that's going to give us a more frequent monitoring schedule for those restorations. For certain parks, we have site-specific natural resource management plans that we may be able to incorporate more frequent updates. And I think the data that we've collected in our regional plans is feeding into those to make those more up to date.
Okay.
But for places like Elk Preserve, Healthy Meadows, River Bend Park, we watch those sites a little bit closer because of the quality and in some cases rarity of the natural resources of those sites. And we would definitely want to be tracking those on a tighter schedule than once every 10 years.
Okay.
In the meantime.
But the tracking is probably not, we're probably reasonably adequate in the tracking. But if we were behind anywhere, it would be the implementation of what we find in the tracking, right? If you were going to dump
Probably
dollars-
behind in both.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
if you were gonna dump dollars at something, a bad way to put it, but if we could get more money for something, it would be mitigating what we find in our studies.
Right. And
That's a priority.
yeah, this from a natural resources perspective, I think we do have a very robust program for park agency, but there's always more opportunities to invest in natural resource management, mitigation, and restoration. So what we're finding is leading to discussions within the regional plans as far as project prioritization for future projects, but that is a snapshot in time. So more of that responsive management happens, on the site level where we can have folks out there more frequently and they can raise a red flag or manage the problem themselves, depending on their level of expertise and certification and herbicide application training and things like that.
Okay.
Protection measures is the other thing. So the legacy program has as a secondary component to it, establishing protection measures for where we do, survey and find these rare plants and rare natural communities. We hope that they would be there in 10 years, but we don't always know.
Right.
But in those cases, when we find them, we have limited funding and we're still learning what exactly the overall cost is just for maintenance for that program. But we would use the surplus to then implement herbivory control measures like fencing or even just exclusion measures to keep people out from like where we have, say, a rare plant like a purple fringeless orchid so that it doesn't get trampled and so that that population or that community can survive and succeed. But that's secondary really at this point to maintaining the active management priorities that we've established as a result of the monitoring that we've done.
Okay. Last question in the managing wild populations category. You had two bullets right on top of each other related to invasive management. I just wanted to understand how they're related. So you had one line that said treated 1,100 acres for invasive vegetation, and right below it was completed 56 invasive species treatment plants on 157 acres at 23 parks. So there, are we being very specific about our wording there? Vegetation versus species? Okay.
And the reason why is, we can establish treatment plans. I'll give you an example. If we were to identify a problem in a meadow at a park that had porcelain berry moving into it, and
Yep.
it didn't have an invasive treatment plan set up, we could say, okay, well, we're not gonna be able to manage that during this season, but we might be able to hit it in the fall or the summer. We would then write that treatment plan. And if there is a number of those that say volunteers at IMA sites, for example, uncovered, so hey, like, there's a bunch of kudzu here and volunteers can't manage that. Well, we can write a treatment plan for a future implementation. So yeah, I'm being very specific there. Like, we've knocked out this much, but we've identified these issues so that we know where we need to go next.
Okay. Cool. I'm done.
Other questions? Thank you very much, and adjourning the committee.
Linwood?
Call the Park Operations Committee to order. And then it's, got 3 items tonight. You're
Good
gonna,
evening, everyone. I'm also not that tall. Okay, we can give you a book to sit on or something. Okay.
We'll figure it out. I'll be extra. Good evening, everyone. Kim Eckert, Division Director, Park Operations. Tonight, we have 3 items for your consideration. First, the quarterly report for our projects. Next up, we have the Oakmar renaming. And to conclude, we'll have the Maston Brook grant request from the McLean Central Playground team. So we'll get started with the quarterly projects report. As a reminder, these project highlights will cover April through June 2023. So that'll be the 4th quarter of FY23. And then we'll come back here in November and give you an update on Q1 for FY24. Our agendas have been pretty packed, so we're gonna fit it in next month. All right, first up, we have Hunter Mill District. We have a water line installation at Frying Pan Farm Park. So this installation of a water line to the Spirit Equestrian Center was to provide a water source for the horses. It eliminates the need to haul 250 gallon tank manually to the Equestrian Center. This was fully funded by Spirit Open Equestrian. The cost was just over $29,000. The completion date was June 2023. The project manager was Russ Davis, and he worked with Service Works and Fairfax Water to complete the project. Next up, in the Drainsville District, you may be familiar, Mr. Hackman. It's Spring Hill Park. We did some clearing and landscaping. We cleared some vegetation and regraded the site. We removed dead trees and we added it to our mowing contract. This work was done in-house, just over 3,000, completed in May 2023 by our area manager, Oliver. James Powers, our mobile crew manager, and Patrick Thompson, our forestry manager. In the Providence District, we completed a basketball court renovation at Ford Street Park. We replaced the basketball goals, installed new asphalt layers, color coding, and lining. The cost of this project was just under $80,000. The completion was April 2023. The project manager was Karen DeVore, and it was completed by ATC.
Lots of good feedback on that.
Thank you. In the Franconia District, we had some shelter improvements in Mount Vernon Woods Park. We removed quite a bit of graffiti there, as well as painted the entire shelter. This cost was just over $6,700. The completion was May 2023, and the project manager was our facility team, Alan Crawford and Ron Pearson. It was completed by Jay Roberts. Mason District, we installed some memorial benches at Kendale Woods Park. These benches were replaced through the Memorial Bench Program. This project was funded by donations to the Park Foundation. The cost was just over $2,000. The completion date was May 2023. The project manager was our area manager, Amber Stramel. And the work was completed by Castle Sports and some of our in-house staff, Stephen Shoemaker and John Studholm. In Braddock District, we completed some trail improvements at Long Branch Stream Valley. We improved some of the trail conditions, installed culvert pipes to improve some of the drainage. The cost of this was just over $17,000. The completion date was June 2023. Our project manager was James Powers, our mobile crew manager, and he worked with his in-house mobile construction crew. Next up in the Springfield district, we have some trail renovations at Burke Lake Park. This is phase 2 of that project. We installed some new gravel surface. Some of the sections included was the route from the dam to the marina, the amphitheater area, and the campground trailhead. We replaced culverts and improved the damage. I'm sorry, improved the drainage. Damage drainage. This was funded by donations and funding from Supervisor Harity's office. Cost was $21,000. Completion date was May 2023. The project manager was again James Powers, our mobile construction crew manager. Next up, Mason District, trail renovations at Glasgow Park. We installed a new ADA route to the playground. We also installed a new picnic area grill pad. The cost was just over $43,000. The completion was April 2023. The project manager was Karen DeBoard, and she worked with Tibbs Paving to complete the project. Again, in Mason District, we completed some restroom renovations. The amphitheater restroom specifically at Mason District Park. We did renovate the interior, added some new fixtures, painted the walls, and added some tile, and we added some tile to the walls and flooring. We also painted the exterior and did some concrete work. The cost was just over $152,000. The completion was May 2023. The project manager, again, was our facilities team, Alan Crawford and Ron Pearson, and they worked with contractor Jay Roberts. Again, Mason District. We did some more restroom renovations at Mason District Park. The shelter restroom building renovation was completed. We did complete some new interior wall and floor tile. We added some new fixtures, painted and completed some concrete work. This was 91.7. Completion date was April 2023. The project manager again was our facilities team, Alan Crawford and Ron Pearson. They worked with Jay Roberts. Next up, Franconia District, the Franconia Rec Center family restroom renovation. We completed some new interior wall and floor tile. We added some new fixtures, painted, and completed some concrete work. This was funded by Franconia Rec Center donations. The total cost was $43,420. The completion was June 2023, and the project managers again were our facilities team, Alan Crawford and Ron Pearson, working with Jay Roberts. And last, we have some in Mason and Braddock District. We have some fencing and backstop replacements at Ossian Hall Park, where we replaced the split rail fence with new chain link fence. And then at Pine Ridge Park and Wakefield, we replaced the backstops. The cost was just over $72,000. The completion was April 2023. The project manager was our Area 1 crew, Laura Troy and Dan Bose, and they worked with Long Fence to complete the project. So we have for Q4 of FY23. Any questions?
I have a quick question, actually. The basketball court one, was that, it looked like it was 2 full courts from the picture?
Yes. Correct.
Okay, is that, I think it was $80,000.
Just under, yep.
Is that a pretty normal cost for that?
So naturally, what we've been discussing is all of our costs have been going up.
Sure,
So this year, yes.
but
Just
not over the history of time.
you know,
It also really depends on the level of the renovation required. So some require us all the way go to
full
mill and
base.
yeah,
If
full
you take
base.
a Full base, it's
Is-
a lot more expensive.
Is that what happened there?
No.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they can get
Yeah,
more,
that would
they
be a
can
lot
get
more
even more expensive. Okay,
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, and some, and if I remember correctly, some have fencing, some of the facilities include like fencing around them, so it could actually have more stuff there. That also has to be done, that makes it even that much more expensive than just the courts to be on the
Stabilize.
level of stuff that's going on.
okay.
Any questions? Want to turn it over to Sarah for the Oakmar renaming.
Good evening, everyone. Sarah Baldwin, Deputy Director. Liz, okay.
And just one note on this item before we get started. I know it's on our formal agenda as action item 1, I believe. Yes, that's correct. But just to let everyone know, we will postpone action on that to the November meeting.
Good evening. I bring to you this evening a proposal to rename Oakmar Park and Rec Center Golf Center. As you know, we've gone through the process over the last couple of years of looking at park names to better align with community interests and move away from glorifying the Confederacy. We're also trying to align with the county's approach to renaming. I'm gonna turn it over to Liz Kroll, who will tell you a little bit about John Quincy Marr.
The park itself was named for John Quincy Marr. He was the first Confederate soldier that was killed in combat by a Union soldier in the Civil War. And he was killed at the Battle of Fairfax Courthouse. The Daughters of the Confederacy had erected a monument to commemorate his death, and that was on the courthouse lawn. And in 2020, the Marr Monument was removed from the courthouse, and you can see it was done at night and was removed using a crane.
So I think everyone is familiar with Oakmar Park. Our proposal is to rename the park to Oak District Park. In terms of the park classification, this park is a district park based on the amenities and scope of the park. So this aligns with the classification of the existing park. So we would rename Oakmar Rec Center to Oak District Rec Center, rename the golf to Oakmar, from Oakmar Golf to Oak District Golf. And we would begin immediately. So asking for your approval to move this forward.
So have we had any public feedback about this so far?
We did. So we went out to an Oakton community group and requested their feedback on the renaming, and they were fully in support of it. We've also worked with Mr. Quincy and Supervisor Palchuk, and they both are in support of the renaming as well.
Well, okay.
I'm sorry, Tim.
My only comment would be, naming it Oak District implies to me that Oak is a Fairfax County district. So to some degree, it was confusing. You wouldn't oppose it, but that was sort of my reaction, because our other rec centers are named, Franconia District Rec Center, I think, and some.
Oh, we have South Run District Park and South Run Rec Center, which is right in Springfield.
And then
Appreciate the precedent.
I'm in the same place. I didn't rock the boat at all, and knowing that there's community support and for that would certainly go along with it, but it seems a little plain to me.
Yeah.
How would you dress
it up?
Oak something, or
Contemplated
tall,
a
or
lot of-
tall oak, or big oak, or something like that.
As I said, I'm not.
Yeah.
Oak lawn.
And I'm not either. And I'm not either.
Well, you cannot incorporate Oakton into the park because there's already an Oakton Community Park. Although some of the feedback I got indicated folks want Oakton in there somehow, but I don't know how you do it without the confusion with the other park.
Oak Tree Park.
Oakton District Park, no, not that one.
Let me note that down.
Sorry, I mentioned it.
No, it's a good question because I've been approached a number of times about it. And I'm not sure what the right answer is, to be perfectly honest, and that's sort of the feedback I got.
We threw around a lot of different alternatives.
Sure you
and
did.
we came to this as Probably
So,
just drop them on.
consensus to move this forward unless somebody has a better idea by next month.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
On to the last thing, the Massenbrook. Thank you, Sarah. The Massenbrook for McLean Central Park.
I didn't make a scene.
Gonna yell into the microphone. Okay.
Works.
Wow, you really got
Good luck,
close.
yeah.
I'm just gonna talk further now. So my name's Adam Wynn. I'm a project manager, landscape architect with Plan Development, and tonight I'm gonna be presenting the Massenbrook grant for the McLean, the new playground at McLean Central Park. So to give a little bit of, I was gonna start off with giving you all a little bit of a background, how this project evolved. So in 2020, funding was approved with the park bond to move forward with park improvements, guided by the 2013 Park Master Plan. As there was a significant lap of time between the funding and the master plan approval, staff held 2 public meetings in 2021 to present the proposed improvements to the community. So it was during this time, we got a lot of comments from the community, but the one strong theme was to combine the Tot Lot playground and the school age playground in one central location. And supplement that in that central location with new play equipment that was more inclusive to all types of play. So currently the Tot Lot and the school age playgrounds are in different parts of the park. So if you are a parent and have kids of different ages, this obviously poses a problem. The budget for the entire project could only support replacing school age equipment and not the Tot Lot equipment. So during this time, several individuals came forward with and expressed interest in working with us to fundraise, basically to develop a playground that was above and beyond what the budget could accommodate. So at this point, a group called themselves the Moms of McLean, but later became known as McLean Central Playground Team, which is what this Massenbrook application is from. So they worked with staff to come up with basically the new centralized playground design and included a variety of play equipment for all abilities and ages. So the pictures on the screen show the current playground, the 2 playgrounds out of the park today. The 2 photos at the top are the Tot Lot, and the bottom photo is the school age playground over near the sport courts. And this is the proposed design. The existing Tot Lot playground would be expanded to accommodate both school age and Tot Lot equipment. So the equipment itself would offer a variety of play equipment, including sensory play and adaptive, also an adaptive tandem swing to really welcome children of varying abilities and ages. The Tot Lot that you see in the background, that would be enclosed with a fence. And then those gray paved areas that you kind of see in the background, those are actually going to have benches and tables. The surfacing is anticipated to be poured in place rubber. But the fundraising team is still working their way towards raising enough money for that portion. The McLean Central Playground team has really been a committed partner in working with us to make this vision a reality. They quickly pulled together a fundraising plan that included flyers, social media, news articles, and meeting with local businesses. Their combined efforts have led to $246,000 raised to date. So the $246,000 raised by the playground team would be combined with our budgeted bond funds and the Massenbrook grant for a total of $442,000 to fund the new playground construction. And upon approval of this grant, the new balance in the grant program would be $685,385. And with that, it's open for questions and discussion.
I have some, just mostly some comments, not, well, I guess they're questions too. Obviously a wonderful plan, obviously wonderful group, bringing money to the table, helping us out with this. I fully expect and hope we do move this forward tonight, but we still have the question of equity in this kind of thing, and this community's ability to raise this kind of money and build this world-class facility where that's just not possible in some other places. With that all said, and I don't believe that we can resolve it tonight at all, but are we moving forward or thinking about, do we have any plans to come up with policies and practices, to address the equity issue, bringing large amounts of money to the table, because this is the second project kind of in this subject where same community brought a lot of money to the table for a sports field, and we had this discussion there. Are we moving forward? Does anybody have any idea? Like a portion of all donations spread across the county, something, just throwing ideas out, not trying to resolve anything tonight, but are we moving forward with plans to have a policy to address it?
So I think the approach that we discussed last time was we wanted to get through the PROSA process so we could identify where the needs were throughout the community. And then from there, we would develop a strategy for how we address that. Part of which may be developing a policy that says, every time we invest in one area through the Massainbrook grant, we're also investing in an opportunity area in the county. So I think that's the next phase of PROSA, is to start recommending some policy changes that would help us implement.
And have we started that implementation? Do we have a plan to start implement, the discussion? Where are we at as far as actually starting the discussion of how to implement some sort of policy or plan?
So you all approved PROSA last month, correct? And so we've just started those discussions now.
Okay, but this.
There is not a specific plan to address this particular issue yet.
But it's coming, it's the next step, it's coming soon.
Yes. One of the next steps, yes.
PROSA is gonna impact a lot of what we do.
Absolutely.
Across the board. I'm sure this is one of the many things that'll touch. I just know that there's a ton of staff time that'll go into and community feedback and stuff for making these work, and I know that
A huge piece will be how PROSA is used to inform our 26 bond development. So that's a huge piece of what we'll be working on as the next step with PROSA as well. So a lot of different moving parts with that.
Ron, do you have a question?
I wanted to make sure that the structure that we're putting in, it's not encroaching on the RPA, because the original diagram had the circle encroaching on the RPA, but I'm assuming we're not.
We're definitely outside the RPA. And I'd say the school age playground, the current location, the school age playground is within the RPA, and we're actually now moving it out by doing this. So we're actually is a net improvement.
Anybody else have anything?
I just want to echo your, Bill can follow, but I just want to echo your comments and thank you for bringing them up. It's something Bill and I talked about yesterday and today as well. So yeah, you're not the only one thinking about it, and I hope it is something we are working on.
Yeah, I wanted to echo Linwood's comments as well. I mean, I'll certainly support it moving ahead, but man, the public sees this, the bigger part of the public sees this, and it's the same thing over and over again. So, the faster that we can move along with whatever the process with PROSA is, the better off we're going to be. Right. And the other thing we need to assess is, do we have anything else in the pipeline that is being proposed, something proposed like this, that's an upgrade to something that's.
So one of the next projects that will come forward is Mount Vernon Woods, which is in an equity area of the county. We originally planned for a smaller playground. We'll bring the scope to you soon, but part of that will be to use ARPA funding so that we can enhance the playground as a part of that project. So as projects come forward, we're looking at how we can use alternative funds to enhance the projects in opportunity areas throughout the county. Mount Vernon Woods being a great example of one of the next ones coming up.
And this is Jay. All the time, we get this request all the time. Anytime any group wants to come in with their own money to enhance a field, a facility, this is the same thing that we're dealing with. I think this is a very large conversation that we need to have, and start off not just with us proposing a policy, but to really get into the nitty gritty about stuff, because this is a constant sort of reallocation and, you know, decisions that we're making individual park by individual park. And when you look at each individual thing by itself, yeah, of course, if we can get better, then that's great. But if you step back and look at the whole thing, it's like, it's the time and the staff time and the design time and all of this other stuff. And what you end up being, it's the quote, the racial equity quote of, you know, the quality and quantity of parks in a certain area should not reflect, or the demographics of an area should not reflect the quality and quantity of parks in the area. This is where that starts to, you know, happen. It's not done on purpose necessarily, but I think this is a very large conversation. And I think even starting without getting into the what as to what PROSA looks like and where we should be doing is, what do we want that to be? Should it be everything? Should it be certain things? You know, I think I said before, playgrounds in Montgomery County are sacrosanct. There's a list. Nothing that you can do can get a playground higher up or lower, just because that's like a really important thing. So maybe it's field. I don't know what the answer is, but I think just starting to have the conversation to direct us in the direction that the board is interested in going might be a much better first step. What do we have the appetite to throw into the mix that we're talking about, type of thing?
Well, I just want to clear something you didn't say. It may have implied it depending on how someone interpreted it. This project didn't jump the queue. This was going to happen regardless. Well, you just got onto the playground list of Sangerstein, nothing can move. So I don't want anybody to get the impression that
not at all
wrong. Nobody did anything wrong with this one. It just, you know, shines a spotlight on an issue we have of this community is getting a playground $250,000 better than we would have budgeted otherwise. So we need to make sure the same thing happens elsewhere if we're really going to live up to the kind of equity pledge and statements we've made as a park system.
And it gets messier than that, because if you've known me for the 2 years I've been here, every playground should get a $400,000 playground. So it's not necessarily that we're, you know, increasing it. That's really should be the standard. How do we make sure, instead of saying, why do they get more? How do we make sure that this is the standard everywhere that we're going, that we have the means and the opportunity to put in a $400,000 playground in parks that are so centrally located, you know, like this. It's a big conversation that we're very excited to have.
Yeah, and you, I mean, you said a number of different things there, especially around the community. I mean, this becomes a destination playground, and that needs to be advertised. And I can tell you, those folks in that neighborhood are not going to be very happy about collecting more people from the outside to come into that park. It's just the way it is. They're going to contribute to that park, and they're going to consider that their park, neighborhood, and that's not what we're all about.
Ron, I see, but Tim's had his hand up a little bit, so you're next after Tim.
I think I don't disagree about needing to have a conversation in this area and looking at potential other ways, different models, different methods for how to approach this discussion. I'll echo what Kyle said. This is one that was has a genesis a long time ago. It goes way back, you know, as we were beginning our 2020 bond discussions. The funding is in the bond. We had originally had a more aggressive concept for McLean Central Park, and the community says that's too much. That really is more than we want in this community. But we also recognized that there was an interest in, for logical reasons, I have kids of different ages. I want both playgrounds to be together so that my kids can play together, and I don't have to have a nanny to come with me or some friend to handle the kids in one area while I'm with the kids in another area. So, and I think, you know, the funding was there. So it's not, as Kyle said, it's not an issue of, as has happened of situations where somebody comes in with a lot of money. And then there's a decision to force that into the planning schedule. That was not the case here. So I think it's a great deal. We're getting in this case, about a 10-to-1 return on our investment of the Maston Brook funds. And we're getting what we thought we had planned originally in the park funding. Obviously, our costs increased over the time. And so I think it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
I do have an idea, of course, and that is that the Board of Supervisors match any donation we get from the public for these improvements, so we could spread that money equitably around the county. Anyway, Ron.
Foundation would love that from a corporate fundraising standpoint.
Ron, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I guess I think what I'd also like to see when we see these numbers on the cost of building is the cost of maintaining as well. If we're putting this facility up, we have to maintain it over the life cycle, and that can be cost prohibitive. The bigger we build it, the more it's going to cost for us to keep it in the condition that they expect it to be in that community. That is another hurdle that we haven't discussed much of.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I got one.
Yeah.
No, I want to essentially second what Ron said, because we've historically sort of been behind the 8 ball on maintenance. And it's not intentional. You just have to have the dollars to do it. But the bigger and more elaborate the facility, as Ron pointed out, the more maintenance dollars are needed to keep it acceptable to the public. So I think that's right, Ron. We do need to keep that in mind.
Is that it? Tim, this is yours, right?
It is.
And you support it, of course.
Right, yes,
So
right, yes.
consensus to move it along.
Yes.
Thank you very, very much, Kevin Adams.
Thanks, everyone.
Is there any other business to come before the operations committee? Being done, I adjourn the committee.
Okay. We'll now call the budget committee to order, and
Josh and
see who's coming.
Josh and Mike.
Yeah. Okay, Josh and Mike, it's yours.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Quincy. We have several things to go through tonight, several things where we will be asking for approvals from the committee as well as action. This is really the end point of our proposed budget process. Just ask you to strap in, please, if you have any questions, let us know and we'll answer those questions. We'll go through all of this, and then because it is very much related to this, Josh will also then bring the next step in the fee process up. So with that, I've been given control. And just to remind everyone, I know we've sent this information out. We did have several different projects which were funded, and essentially remember these are one-time funds from FY 2023 carryover. You can see this totals $13.5 million. And we were just talking about operations. We were just talking about maintenance. I just want to remind everyone that we have to use this money on some very specific requirements. So for instance, capital equipment for park operations, that's to replace aging capital equipment. We can't spend it on anything else. We have our general sinking fund allocation, which is, I believe this is the highest it's been at this point. We receive 15% of what is allocated for overall sinking fund, but that has to go to maintaining what we have, catching up with what we have. So you'll see several things down the road, like what Kim was just reporting on. You'll see more and more of how we've allocated the general sinking fund to that as well.
Mike, that $6 million, roughly $6 million number, does that feed into that $160 million deficit
It does.
Okay.
It does. In the future, when we come back with our CIP discussion, we'll talk a little bit about that chart that we show every year, which has increased, but we also have made progress on that. So things keep getting older, but anything we can do to invest back in the system, we're certainly doing that. For instance, right now it's not general sinking fund, but we have about $16 million worth of projects going on throughout our rec centers. Mostly roof replacements, mechanical system replacements, things that needed to be done. So we're making those kinds of investments now. What's not on here are a couple of additional things that aren't really necessarily specifically for the park authority. They are for us as we are the stewards of the synthetic field replacement funding. I know you talked about that at the athletic council recently, and we are funded for this year and moving into next year with additional conversations going on about how we handle those much bigger years. We don't have any option in terms of when we replace those. Already 10 years is at the end of the useful life there, and we're working very closely with DMB to continue monitoring that. So that $2.5 million was allocated in there. You also see some other things like capital improvement program assistance. That's to help us further down the road with some of our bond cash flow issues as we get into when we look at some of the major projects that we may be programming in the 26 bond. So more to come with all of this, but just to remind everyone that the county continues to work with us even in this time period when we have reduction packages that have gone forward. We've also put together our request packages, and that's really what you'll see here in just one second. After the end of the first quarter, just so you can see where we are, here in FY24, our total expenditures, if you look at the third column, actuals, we're at about $8.3 million compared to the same time last year, about $6.7 million. And if you just really follow this as you move forward here, it's really driven primarily by $1.4 million in merit and non-merit salaries. That doesn't mean that we're hiring many more expensive people. It means that salaries, benefits have gone up. Right now, as we're planning for FY24, that fringe benefits factor is 51%, 51.35%. What we're looking at, but also as the county has really incorporated the results of the pay compression study and some of those other initiatives, you can see where it's hitting us. And as we continue to monitor, certainly, we want people to be paid as much as possible, but we're also taking a watchful eye on it in the general fund as well as in the revenue fund. Speaking of the revenue fund, the same thing here. You can see where we are, FY24, we're at 17.9, almost $18 million as of this time for the first quarter. FY23, we were at $14.5 million. Really $1 million, more than $1 million of that is related directly to salaries. And you'll see a couple of graphics here in just a second that show, especially on the revenue fund side, we are working fewer hours compared to the past, but those hours are more expensive. And it's just, again, the result of pay compression, and it's a result of really where we are with the labor market. Our revenue trends here, just looking at the first quarter, you can see that we've added our bar right there. We're closing in right at about $14 million at this point in time. And you can see that that is higher than previous first quarters. But of course, our expenses were also higher as well. This first quarter, reminding everyone, that's July, August, September over the summer. So that's when we had the bulk of our summer camp revenue that was realized. And expenditures, of course, were also higher, just like we were talking about. We have the high costs related to summer camp, but then also the impact of those salaries that we were talking about there. So when we compare our nets, you can see our net is more on par with the first quarter of FY20. Again, you can see where we very much focused on saving during the pandemic time period. And we've come back. This doesn't mean that we expect a negative trend to continue, just where that investment and where that revenue was in that first quarter. So this is how, yes, Mike.
First quarter 2020, I'm trying, this doesn't align with calendar quarters.
Correct, yeah,
Three,
our
so-
first quarter is July, August, September.
Right, so first quarter 2020 fiscal year would have been
That would have been July, August, September of 19.
of 19.
Yeah.
So pre-pandemic,
Correct.
life, sometimes I just want to make sure we are, okay.
I have it written in all of my documents because I often forget that
No.
as well.
I'm also thinking if I'm losing track, somebody who's watching might be losing track.
Yeah, thank
All
you. Thank you very much. So this is how that activity looks across our different revenue fund activities. You can see where we are with our rec activities, our rec centers. RMD is right in the black. Golf is also in the black there. You can see that we are at, just as we said, just about $14 million in revenue. And the expenditures are just at about $18 million. That transfer to the Park Improvement Fund, that's what the board approved as part of our closeout of last year. It just happened in this fiscal period. So that's one other piece there that you won't see that repeated period after period.
Mike, can you go back to that side?
Yeah.
For golf particularly, but both for golf and rec center related. Are those revenue increases, are they more correlated to usage or an increase in usage or any fee adjustments we've made?
Both.
Okay.
So we've made fee adjustments that have had an impact. We'll see another impact here as we enter the second quarter with the out of cycle approval that we did in
Right.
September. We just saw very little bit of that. We'll see more of that moving forward. But play is up in
Okay.
golf still, and rec centers, we'll talk about it a little bit during the fee portion, but rec center memberships and program growth is all up significantly. So the revenue is from both.
Great, thanks.
So as we then move into the proposed budget development summary, incorporating some of that information that we just talked about here, you can see where we are. October, we're finalizing our baseline budget requests, the different items that we've been going over during the last several meetings, including that non-recommended budget reduction package, which is one of those first things that we went through. So that's where we are with our timeline. So the first action item here is reviewing what we have as far as the general fund budget submission. Just reminding everyone that there are several different pieces of the budget development guidance that certainly affects us, including that the BOS directed the county executive to take a look at rates and fees and our services and programs and really limit what we're looking at as far as budget requests are concerned. This is where we then built that 7% non-recommended budget reduction package with our total general fund target of almost $2.4 million. And just as a reminder, we also then on the flip side had the budget guidance that we are encouraged to work very closely with the Board of Supervisors as Jay and Sarah and leadership have been doing to brief on what these needs are that are laid out before we actually get to submission. And the board also has directed that FCPA should be made whole operationally for forest and bamboo mitigation, and that we're to continue working on the Park Ranger program as well. We don't have a budget request for the Park Ranger program because that work is ongoing right now with the police department. So just to remind everyone, here are the items that are part of that really form the whole non-recommended general fund budget reduction list. We won't hear any information about what is or is not taken. The outlook, the financial outlook is looking somewhat better than it did at the time that this was originally discussed in the summer. But this is still part of the overall discussion as far as the county executive is concerned. So as we know more, we will certainly report back. And just to keep that in perspective, the only revenue that we have in the general fund is on the rec pack side of things. So we saw this as an opportunity to make sure that the hourly rate was comparable to what Camp Fairfax, what SAC fees are, but still incorporating the fact that we have pretty substantial fee reductions that are associated with this program as well. So that's a revenue increase as opposed to a cut. There is the possibility of reducing the program and working closely with NCS and with schools on what that could look like if the county decided to take that reduction. The bamboo mitigation position, managing the bamboo program is in the list here, reducing our park mowing, which is our Class C mowing, which is more or less around our sites. This is not athletic field at this point. That comes a little bit later. Trail maintenance funding, those wonderful projects that you saw up on the screen from Karen DeBoer and her team focusing out with park operations. Eliminating the new forestry positions, reducing our athletic field mowing, our court maintenance budget, our standalone park restrooms, and our Porta Johns athletic fields.
Ken, while we're on this
Go ahead.
chart, if I may ask a question. We're our hands are tied, seems to me, on the staffing, at least until the advertised budget comes out, at least. But would we hope at that point, assuming that those positions are not included in terms of any cuts, that we could get some assurance to be able to move ahead and fill those positions? Because otherwise, we're gonna be, the final budget isn't adopted to May, we're gonna be going a whole fiscal year, more or less, without filling those positions, or we're gonna fall farther behind. So is there any way to accelerate a decision? I mean, I'm not sure if this is good.
Those positions and everything around them in terms of being able to recruit, we are ready to go. We have the packages ready from an administrative standpoint. I know Jay has been in contact with Christina Jackson and our colleagues in the Department of Management and Budget and Finance to determine if there is a point where we know or don't know if those are going to go forward, that we're given that heads up. So we're trying to push for that as quickly as we can. I know John is chomping at the bit to be able to hire here, and I know Kim is as well, to be able to deal with these.
Appreciate the
Yes, Evan.
So with regards to the rec pack adjustments, is that featuring in the conversations under PRUSA? Because I'm thinking about equity, who's using rec pack in terms of population? I know you're trying to bring it in line with SAC, but it would be interesting to see which populations are taking advantage of each. Because cost is a consideration, and so I think it's an important.
Sure. I think that the one thing with Rec Pack, unlike every other program we offer, there is a sliding fee scale.
Right.
So I think at the bottom of the scale, people are paying $15 a week. And that would remain with the proposal or go up
Slightly different pricing, but they still have a scale that goes down to very low dollar amounts for those who are income eligible. We all have different scales today. I think it's trying to align some of that, but they have a similar concept with the sliding fee scale and making sure there's price reductions for those who are most in need.
Right. But I still think the populations may be a little different, so something to consider.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's a good point, and not only overall the populations differ, but within site. Great.
And I think the important piece to remember here, when we went through all of those reductions, we start here, but then it gets funneled down further and further what we can even consider as far as the general fund is concerned. We have very few general fund activities. And by putting this together, it at least pushes out there the very real fact that those are people who are going to be affected by that change.
Yeah, but I also think that from a rec pack standpoint, choice of location that is shut down, they have as bigger an impact on equity than
That's what I was.
slightly changing the
Both,
sliding
yeah,
scale.
I would say both.
Yeah, but I think that if we end up having to shut some down, that doing that carefully because of those issues becomes critical.
Any other questions? Is there consensus to move this forward?
So we're not even done yet.
I don't think.
Oh,
I don't think they're close to done yet.
We're just getting started.
Carry on.
So for our baseline budget submission, it's essentially, number one, we look at what the baseline is for FY24 adopted. And we have not incorporated those proposed reductions into this, but we have incorporated what we hope if the requests are looked upon favorably, what that would look like. So you can see there that the baseline proposal here would be $37.8 million in expenditures, an increase of $6.3 million. And how did we come up with that? I put a lot of pretty colors in here and I'll tell you exactly what they mean. So as we recall, it came to the board with our original staff draft of what the budget request would look like. That's your first column there, the original staff draft. And then after we presented that, Chairman Stone asked us to come back with really what the full suite of sort of trying to restore that park maintenance funding would look like. So then we added that $1.21 million onto that. And then there were a few more changes made. I wanted to make sure this was in the record. When we worked with the Department of Management and Budget to put those final numbers together, you see that these numbers on the right now also include fringe benefits if there are staff who are involved. They're not funded from the general fund. It's a separate fund, but these are the numbers that they will use as far as advertising and discussing that is concerned. Also, if we have staff, there's a planning factor of adding $5,000 in annual operating costs for computers and things like that added to that as well. So what you see here going from 6.8 million to 8.9 million, we call that more of a fully loaded number. All of the implications are in that. And it's not that we, didn't realize how much things were costing. We just wanted to make sure that this matches up so nobody has any questions out there. And why the different colors? When we talk about all of these different requests, as we talked about with Kim's maintenance presentation, we are funded for these different things, both in the general fund and in the county construction fund. So you'll see, for instance, those things that are green, those are just in the general fund. Those things that are blue, those are in both of the general fund and the county construction fund. And then the things that are not marked, those couple of things there, those are purely in the county construction fund. So again, pulling it all together so you see where it is, and then we break it out as far as how the county takes a look at this. It's also important to note with the zero waste trash removal and recycling, that's a big number. $4 million is a very large number there. And that is something that we are very much talking about. How can that be phased? And how can that also be looked at in terms of what's one time and what is ongoing? So those are two different areas that we focus on that. For instance, we wouldn't want to buy a new trash truck and then not have a coterie of staff to be able to staff that trash truck. We need to be able to have those things pulled together in terms of how it makes sense to roll it out. So really, as Jay's been talking about this with the Department of Management and Budget, it's how we could phase this, how we could look at this and roll it out over a period of months and years to be able to get full capacity there. This then is how it breaks down with what's in the county construction fund. Just talk a little bit about that. It's the same numbers, just broken down differently here. And then we have our general fund budget request, and what's actually in the general fund part of here is this $4.2 million almost. Phase one, we've already talked about that. That's when we brought these forward. We also talked about the budget reductions. In phase one, we received 37 comments through Park Mail. And almost universally, they were, of course, focused on non-recommended budget reductions. A lot very focused on environmental concerns. You can see the other couple of bullets here as well. In phase two, we received 18 total comments, but this also included substantial comments from the Fairfax Parks Coalition, as well as from the Environmental Quality Advisory Council. You have copies of all of those in your board packet. Again, the focus was very much on environmental concerns, specific parks that we love in our system. And the Parks Coalition talking about making sure that we should make our operations whole, asking us to prioritize IMA, translation, equity outreach staff, forestry, and zero waste. And the Environmental Quality Advisory Council, again, advocating to seek more stable funding for the Park Authority and really stabilize all of those different funding sources. So again, you can read those documents that are attached to your board item. So the action item related to this is endorsement of the general fund budget submission to the Department of Management and Budget. We've had ongoing conversations. These were due on the 13th, but they're not finalized until the board endorses them and then Jay signs them.
Questions, comments? Yes, Linwood.
Got a comment just in general, and I don't pretend to understand every line and every column in this. I understand most of it though. And I just feel like we mostly are addressing what we know is going to cost us more to provide the same services that we provide today. And there's not a lot of ask at all for things that we want to do better or in addition or improvement. And I just question, and not saying this is the year to do this. I'm not asking to change gears at this point. But I just feel like if we ever want to get up to the budgets of some of the other areas around us, you know, Montgomery County and stuff like that, higher percentages than just 0.6 or 0.7 of 1%, we have to start asking for those things. And it can't just be pie in the sky ask. We really need to identify things that we want to ask for. But, you know, going forward, I think, I hope that's something that we can do is really come up with prioritized lists of what we would like to do better, what we would like to spend more money on, and submit those things each year, even if they get turned down. You know, to be in a position of, wouldn't this be great, and try to have them that things that are undeniably better, but things that we could be doing better. And again, ask high, and you know, ask for 2%. We still 0.3% ahead, but it would have to be a credible approach, stuff like that. Anyway, those are the comments I have about it.
Jay's approach this year has really been on how do we catch up and make up for what hasn't been funded, and then also focusing on the equity request, which is still in formulation, and that'll be coming forward in the next couple of months to the board as well.
Yeah, but the presentation that was given board meeting before last or something like that, that kind of shows the trends and stuff. The last decade, what we trended down 22% or something like that. At least the next decade, I mean, just breaking even, I'd like to get back to where we were 10 years ago in real dollars. But that's not even the same subject that I just talked about. All those, there's so many ways to ask for more. We'll make sure we're asking for you know, what the citizens of Fairfax County want to be spent in our parks.
Any other comments, questions? Ready to move this one? Is there consensus to move this forward?
Yep.
Yes. Thank you.
Like I said, strap in. The rest of these will be pretty quick, I think. Our next action item is related to the board approving the Park Revenue and Operating Fund baseline submission. You can see that our actuals in FY23, which we've already talked about those in previous meetings, we ended up netting almost $2.2 million. As we develop then our FY24 as our baseline, and then looking at our FY25 proposed budget, our goal again is to have net revenue of at least $4 million. But as we're putting this together, to your question earlier, Chairman Stone, how do we identify what we think we can really obtain with the current fees that we have and with the capacity that we have available right now? So you'll hear about fees in just a few minutes. They're not yet in this baseline budget. We will have an opportunity to come back before February if we see enough of an adjustment. But we needed to get a baseline in there, and you can see already with what we think can happen that we're not at that $4 million mark. We're at the $3.2 million mark with really projecting modest increases in expenses beyond our compensation expenses. and getting really to the limit of what we think can happen as far as revenue is concerned.
So that's the question I had on this, the compensation expenses.
Yeah.
I know the current direction is that MRA is at 0. You said that in the board item in the actual text there.
Yeah.
There's a -% chance that the MRA is gonna be 0 come May of next year. So did we build any leeway into anything we're doing?
Yeah, we did probably close to 5% for the revenue
Okay,
estimate that we need on top of what you're seeing here, assuming an MRA increase. And I know we talked about that in some of the previous meetings. We built that in.
so
like
we built in a 5% fee increase?
a 5% based off the salary and where we're still trying to target that 4 million. So, the 3 million you see today, we know that merit salary is going to go up and cut into that 3 million
Right.
net when the county applies it.
Right.
So the fee package that, we'd be proposing in line with the programmatic fees would total together to still keep us around that $4 million. So that takes into account expenses going up.
So
with an
let me ask
MRA.
it this way, it takes into account an MRA increase of what percent?
5%. And you'll see that when we get to the fee slides
Okay.
of kind of our projections for 24 and 25, looking at some of the salary increases and then where.
So as long as they do,
Completely caught,
so as long as they do 5% or less, we're kosher. Okay.
Yeah, and then again, as you recall, the board is authorized, we would come back with those fees that,
Right.
would be further, or would be up for further adjustment if it's more than 5%.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And you would see then, this is how it really ends up, we pull this together, why we know that we can reach this amount based on our current focus, but it also includes, as you can see here, golf coming in with $18 million and expenses of $14 million. That assumes that we continue to have great weather. And we continue to invest back in the golf courses as well. Rec centers in here, that does not include Mount Vernon coming back online completely. And we will see improvements as a result of that in future budgets. But with the capacity that we know we have, this is what we're able to forecast for this next year.
Because when you're looking at the rec centers, we did that big study, what, 6 years ago?
6-7 years ago.
When we're looking, and I know COVID kind of disrupts the units. There were projections there about increases in expenses, revenue, closing on revenue, crisscrossing, going negative, whatever. We've had multiple years now, since COVID at least. Are we in line, or the concerns in that report? Are we in line with some of their projections, and are we looking that those concerns are going to hit us around the time that the report said earlier? That was some scary stuff in that report in terms of requirements for money and all the rest of it.
I think that's still a reality and something that we're constantly looking at. Part of the fee package that we're presenting today includes rec center increases. And all of these increases take into account that we need to, one, grow membership, but also at the same time, we need to increase fees, on an interval basis so that we're not hitting people all at once.
But part of and the reason I'm asking is that often when we look at things in 1 year snapshots, and we go, oh, well, we can just do this increase, we can just do these different things. There were some projections there that without significant capital investments, the amount of the revenue would slide down and the costs were going to go up. And I know that we can use fees to kind of try to put some of that off or whatever. I'm trying to take the 1 year projection piece, take a step back.
Well, I think the short answer is yes, a lot of that is coming in a reality, and what we've done as far as both with our capital projects, we're adding the second ice rink at Mount Vernon to increase capacity. There's the childcare room at Cub Run Rec Center. Some of those improvements are part of that, but nevertheless, it also recommended substantial investment in that infrastructure. So when we take out the enhancements that will be part of bond cycles and then look at what we're trying to accomplish in just catching up and keeping up, well, that number, we really calculated that part of it. It's about $70 million. And that's what we've been talking about with that pie chart that we put out there, we're eating into it and it's great, but then something else is gonna need to happen and
My
we're
rec-
continuing to
I
prioritize.
believe the report was significantly even more than that.
70 million in maintenance and then several tens of millions of dollars in capital investment as well, in additional.
My recollection is around $200 million, and that was in dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not taking into account the inflation, the things that we have hit that have
Yes.
probably driven that up dramatically.
And we are just at the starting point of all of that by looking at roofs, by looking at systems and looking at the things that our excellent maintenance crews have been able to keep together with bubble gum and paper clips, literally in some cases, before we start to get inside and look at so many of those other things that need to be done as well.
It
This
just
is
shows a
the first
long
part.
term. It's a long term issue that I think we count on revenue from the rec centers. And I mean, two things that concern, we have this assumption if we get the revenue, long term, we may not, or it'll shrink. The profit will shrink and could go negative. And we have an assumption right now that golf's gonna continue to go gangbusters. Whereas pre-COVID, everybody was warning us that ain't gonna happen. And so we have these two kind of cornerstones.
We would be in a much different situation right now if it wasn't for golf booming, right? I mean,
Right.
for the past couple of years, we would be in the negative
Safe.
if golf
Right.
had not been booming. And so it's kind of a pendulum shift where, rec centers were holding up golf in the past. Now it's golf that's holding up the fund.
And I just, and heaven help us if the report is true and golf swings the other way on that pendulum, because then neither are holding us.
Right.
Well, and the other is camps, right? So camp is the other business area right now that's also holding us up.
Yeah, I was gonna add, the rec center growth, I think what you'll see has been really good in FY 23 to where we actually surpassed pre-COVID levels in a certain number of these areas. And so part of, and I wanted to correct the statement from earlier, rec centers haven't had any fee increases, so theirs has been natural growth.
Okay.
What we're bringing tonight is we need to increase the fees to keep up. We're not keeping up with the expenses today. I think the participation and engagement at rec centers has been really good over the last year. Obviously, we're hoping that continues, especially something like Mount Vernon coming online. But we're not keeping up today with the expenses that we're experiencing, even while managing, as closely as we can. So it's good to see the positive growth. It just has to be balanced out with, we need to increase to keep up.
And just to your point, the B&D report that had extrapolating what the revenue models would look like, it was somewhere around 3% or so. And we're doing okay right now, but we also know that we can't sit on those laurels. So again, I mentioned that we will be coming back with the equity report with looking at what kind of investment needs to be made by our partners across the street. But at the same time, we have to keep going. And that's why we keep talking about fees and things like this that it's not sustainable, but we have to operate this next year.
Yeah, no,
But you're absolutely right. So that B&D report is very much in line, and Sarah and I talk about it regularly, and it scares me every time we open it.
it scares me.
Yeah, and it's 6 years old.
And the other things that we have on the table, childcare facility is about to open at Cub Run. Hopefully that, increases membership there. Mount Vernon will open in it, hopefully another year or so. We saw the return on the investment with Spring Hill and Oakmar. And so there are things on the horizon, hopefully, that will continue to.
I don't doubt it. I totally get there. New amenities or opportunity. We're taking advantage of certain opportunities. I just remember sitting in this same room being told, if you don't do comprehensive investments, preferably on everything relatively quickly, you're going to be hitting, you're headed towards a problem. And so part of my curiosity was, we often look at these year to year, and even when we look back and forth, we don't go, wait, we had this report. Are we tracking it? Because if we're tracking with that report, we do have this potential disaster that we have to plan around, figure out, and deal with.
We can come back with a comparison of what B&D was projecting and where we are now.
Because there were investments and divestments.
Right, there were.
Mr. Kendall, you had a comment.
And,
Well,
GW was one of those. But we're dependent on GW right now because of Mount Vernon closure. So
Four gangbusters right now.
Exactly.
Okay, Ron Kendall has the floor now.
No, I guess the answer to our rec center issue isn't within the revenue fund, it's within the bonds. And we've had that discussion historically that we would talk about possibly even doing a separate bond for just rec center improvements and renovations. And that was where we were talking about the $200 million we needed in order to take care of all the rec centers. I see the revenue fund as being able to support maintenance on the facilities we have, but there's no way revenue is going to help us when it comes to doing the rec centers.
As Sarah said, we can certainly come back and I think we're not going to say dust off because there's no dust on the P&D report, but be able to do that comparison and show where we are making investments. And it's not that we are going to make it to the end of that soon. We're treading water, but we are at least making some strides.
Yeah, no, I was just, again, curious.
And every opportunity that we have talking about CIP, we talk about the need to invest in rec centers. You know, when we've floated in the past, the idea of a bond for rec centers, it just,
Oh,
we're not getting traction.
Mike was very polite about our partners across the street, whereas I think about our bosses across the street that make that decision.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Quincy. So then the action item here is approval of this baseline submission to the Department of Management and Budget.
Is there consensus to move this forward?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
General County Construction Fund, this is where we start to get a little bit shorter. And remember, this $8.9 million, almost $9 million that we just talked about, a portion of that is in the County Construction Fund. And I'll remind you that some of those big numbers, we are working, very closely with Department of Management and Budget, with Christina Jackson and her team on how do we, move forward with bamboo, how do we move forward with forestry, but really on how we move forward with reacting to the changing requirements related to zero waste trash removal and recycling. So we'll continue focusing on that. You also see your full year of funding for the mobile nature center in here. I think we're that vehicle is just about to be parked in our fleet. It's being accepted into our fleet, and lots of wonderful things are happening with that in town.
Great.
Again, this is just the combination between general fund, county construction fund. What's specifically in here is $4.8 million. And the way that we actually have to do this, we are going into this year that we're currently in with $33.5 million in our general county construction fund. A portion of that is maintenance. There are several different project codes that we've talked about in the past that are in there. So we have $59 million. We have to, in order for it to be appropriated, have to show that we're expending all of that. So you don't see a baseline proposed for next year. It'll be made right as far as a carryover is concerned after the fourth quarter is completed. So,
Okay. Questions, comments? There consensus to move this forward?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, another action item. This is the Park Improvement Fund. In the Park Improvement Fund, this is, primarily where we have our own revenue sinking fund and some of those other projects that are in there. This is also where the Lawrence Trust Reserve is, that $1.5 million. So again, this is more administrative, that we show that we expend everything that we have in there except for the Lawrence Trust Reserve, and then it gets trued up and revised as part of FY25.
Questions, comments? Consensus to move this forward?
Yes.
Okay.
Now this one, you can rest easy. This is just an information item. This is our Park Bond Construction Fund. And this one, just in terms of the outstanding bonds, we do go ahead and have the proposed budget that includes basically exactly what we have in FY24 revised. The important thing to show here is that we had a beginning balance this year of $3.3 million, last year of $3.3 million. We had $28 million available, and we did spend $26.7 million of our bond capacity. That includes about 7.5 million on Mount Vernon, I believe. Finishing Patriot Park North and all of that work we've been doing with the folks across the street related to our cash flow as well.
Is this information item being shared with those across the street so they understand that we're
Yes.
spending? Okay.
Yes, and that information item in terms of if we have a big rec center in the next bond, there is going to be a very, very big year cash flow wise using our county standards for how we model that cash flow. So in future years, it's going to be even more significant. But we don't have yet what the bond sale will be for this year. That'll be coming in January. We are meeting on that, making sure that we have what we need to be able to get through this year. So we're projecting this year to be fine. And then we'll move on into the next years until we get into the next bond cycle, which will present some cash flow challenges.
Just when I look at this, sale of bonds, $117 million.
Right.
Yeah, you're gonna have.
Do I look at this and read it correctly as somebody who is going to ask for lots of explanation for things I've heard for the past 15 years? That, I mean, that seems to say to somebody that looks at it that we're planning to sell $117 million worth of bonds.
That's how it looks, and this is appropriating year over year that amount, but not necessarily the sale of it. So you're right. You're absolutely right.
Should the language then say appropriation?
Yeah,
I'm just
exactly.
I'm
Change
just
the
saying,
language to say a lot of things, I think.
I'm just saying that somebody that doesn't understand the way the bond system works, looks at this and may think, well, they're going to sell $170 million worth of bonds but then have available $118,705,016 with the idea that then why aren't you spending all that money? And I just say out loud that may create a for those who don't understand the budgeting process. Even now, it ain't going to be close to that. And we may want to somehow note that in this process so that the people who are now paying attention to this in a way they may not have been able to before it was streaming, understand what we're really looking at.
It should be a big highlighted in bold, underlined. footnote.
Asterisk.
It's got to be an
Let's
asterisk.
start with this, Mr. Booth.
It's got to be an asterisk behind it.
Or at
We'll
least
do that
a line
going
item,
Yeah.
what's
Yes.
available
Yeah,
for
because
that
that's
year.
just not.
I just,
Just a footnote or.
We don't know what's available
Do
for,
that.
No,
the text of the footnote has to be bigger than the title.
exactly.
well, it's at this point, it's contingent upon whatever the county releases. We don't know what that number is. It's not a percentage of anything.
Right.
It could be $1 million. It could theoretically be 118.
So I think I heard too, we can do that in terms of
Yes.
clarification.
Right,
or
we'll
footnotes.
clarify it next.
Do something to make it.
Yeah, it's a little more clear in the overall county package when it comes out. So it shows what is expected to be spent. That comes out after January, but right now there's nothing that really comes out about that until Department of Finance make their recommendations to the board, and then the board of supervisors approves that.
We
This
can,
needs to be crystal clear.
we can put in some clarification, right? Okay. All right.
So now we're to our last action item. And I'm going to go ahead and send this over to Josh.
I'll go as quick as I can.
Okay.
A reminder on the timeline that we talked about back in our August meeting. We have shifted the timeline from what it's traditionally been. So we're starting the fee process here tonight. We'll move into the public comment period right here at the end of October through November, December to come back to the board for approval and the fee adjustments to take effect in January. So just a reminder on what we talked about previously.
We have talked this to death, so.
And here's just the specific dates that we have: virtual public comment meeting right in the middle there on November 15th.
Okay.
Reminders on how we do this. We start with the net. What do we need to do? We talked about the $4 million number. We move into the expense projections. What are we thinking is going to happen from an MRA standpoint, operating expenses, and then what kind of revenue do we need to generate? We take into account revenue growth, natural revenue growth, and demand on top of the fee increases we'd be proposing. So overall outlook, we've talked about it. Significant expense growth expected to continue. The salary and operating expenses, we have a chart on this. They're the primary driver for these fee increases that we're bringing tonight. Revenue trends remain positive. But to your point earlier, the dependency on certain lines of business, golf is a risk and a challenge for us long term.
I mean, let me ask this question. Yes, that's true. But it is what it is. Our lines of business are rec centers and golf.
So
I mean, they're always, unless we're gonna come up with some new thing where
it's to the point a little bit that we have not increased rec center fees in quite a while, and this dependency on golf being the primary net
Okay.
generator and rec centers falling behind as expenses continue to rise is an area that we need to address.
I bring up Kyle because we were on a downward trend pre-COVID.
Sure.
And I don't know how much this is a bubble versus a true trend.
I understand all that, but to some extent, it is what it is. Those are the two operating lines.
So I know we've gone through this chart before when we talk about, why are we trying to target a $4 million net? It's these requirements that we have here in terms of the stabilization reserve, the deferred revenue, and the need to continue to build that up. And then ideally, where we'd really be focused most is on the sinking fund and making sure that we're reinvesting regularly into the sinking fund. So I know Mike went through the budget numbers and what we're formally submitting, and here are some projections for what we look at for the remainder of this fiscal year and into the next. You can see here 55 million in expenses with the salary growth, up $2.5 million, and then that continuing into FY25. And that's really, again, the primary driver for why we need to continue to look at increasing fees. And that's just highlighting the salary and benefit growth. A lot of times during this process, the question is asked, we state that we're trying to always manage expenses, and that is one of the first areas that we focus on. This chart here is showing the hours worked across our revenue fund system and the expenses we're experiencing from a staffing standpoint. So you look at FY23, we actually worked fewer hours than the previous year and significantly fewer hours than where we were pre-COVID. We really shrunk the number of staffing hours across the system, and yet you can see what happened from 22 to 23 from a salary standpoint, right? That jump from 28.5 million up to 31.6. We expect this to continue even as we manage those hours worked across the system. Operating expenses, another area where we've experienced significant growth. Maintenance and repair, utilities, and contracted programs all significantly up from 22 to 23. And in this area, significantly exceeding where we were pre-COVID.
I think the perfect example of that, we've talked about it a little bit here, the cost of pool chemicals, unavoidable. And that has almost doubled just in the last couple of years, just for pool chemicals alone.
So the fee package that you have, we're looking at a number of areas here. We've got rec centers included for the first time in a number of years on the admissions and discount fast passes, as well as continuing the lap lane approach that we've taken over the years. Water mine admissions and rental offerings, golf, continuation of our strategy from the last several years of the maximum rate and giving some flexibility to look at the demand and what's appropriate. We've also updated the approach to the driving range, which you'll see again in the proposed packet, as well as some small Laurel Hill membership increases, keeping up with the greens fee increases that we've had over the last several years. Additionally, on the RMD side, amusements, I would point out on the amusements, we will take into account previous feedback we've gotten to look at ways we can make the amusement structure more family friendly and options that we have to do some promotional materials there or some discounts for buying higher volume passes. So we're looking at that even while we're proposing the fees to go up, as well as commercial photography here at Green Spring Gardens to keep up with the demand that they experience. So we wanted to spend a minute here on the rec centers. We've seen growth in rec centers, particularly over the last year, in some cases exceeding our pre-COVID levels, some really positive trends on that side from rec centers. At the same time, we're not keeping up with the expenses, right? So we are up higher than we were pre-COVID from an expense standpoint, and we expect that to continue. The salaries are a challenge, and we can't keep pace without looking at raising fees. To the lines of business, this is our rec center memberships over the last several years here. We've actually exceeded near the end of FY23. We are up above where we were pre-COVID. So membership growth and engagement on that side has been really solid. We're not keeping up with the expenses. And this is program enrollment. We are back at a pre-COVID level. Certain program areas, Sarah referenced it earlier, camps, significant revenue generator for us. But we're getting good enrollment and growth in rec centers in the major lines of business. Despite that, you can see the negative return. We've cut into that each year as we've moved forward here. But you see, again, the expenses continuing to rise. The next step is that we need to look at raising fees on the rec centers. The package that's included across all those areas is valued at just over $1 million in additional revenue. And as a reminder, where we move from here, the action item tonight is just to advertise the proposed fee adjustments and set the date of that public comment meeting, with us coming back in December with a recommendation and action item at that time.
In the interest of equity, why don't we put a line item to our ask from the across the street for percentage for this? We're going the opposite of equity whenever we increase the fees at a rec center. And this is, you've summed it up. You know what we need to generate. Why not ask across the street? Make them say no.
I think the equity ask is still a TBD. I think those are areas that we have considered.
This specifically to the equity ask.
I think that could be something that we look at. The thing, we made that ask last year with camps. The issue with that is it doesn't address equity. It keeps fees where they are, but there is still a ton of people that can't afford to go to our camps.
Absolutely.
So it's a Band-Aid on a much larger issue.
But the direction we should be going, if we're really serious about equity, is knowing that we're not equitable right now, but whenever we raise fees, we're less equitable. If we go down fees, we're more equitable.
So we will be bringing to you January 30th, the result of the HRNA study. And in that study, there will be a recommendation on a budget ask. And part of that ask will address access to rec centers. So I think that there will be time as a part of the budget process based on that recommendation to include that.
If I remember correctly, I think I saw reference to it maybe at the very beginning of this presentation, maybe like the first or second slide, that we've been directed not to ask for any new programs.
Yes. The new general fund budget requests need to be for yes, it's actually not new programs, investment in current programs or responding to compliance requirements. Yeah.
It's a current program.
I understand. It strikes me that there will probably be, from an equity standpoint across the system, lots of, I assume they're looking at lots of different pieces.
We're looking at the entire system.
Well, I mean, that there's probably gonna be, I assume, some massive list of options and it's not gonna be here's the key that solves it. It's gonna be, here's a bunch of different pieces to play with and bounce out and go through.
Right, yes.
Has there been discussion across the street about separate budget money towards equity specific stuff, both here and across the county as a whole?
I think that there's an acknowledgement to fix the revenue fund issue. There's going to have to be a significant investment.
I think that the issue, not the issue, but the situation at hand is we're putting two hats on our heads. We have the holding spot for equity, and we're going to have this entire conversation at the same time, because we don't have an agreement or anything in our hands. We have to still operate as if we're 100% revenue funded organization. It can't be sort of both. So when Sarah had mentioned earlier about doing the camps from last year, the thing about the situation we are in with the revenue fund is it's a big number. It's going to take a big boulder to move us in a direction. And so if we were to get, just for instance, if we were to get the $3 million that we need for that. We got to double it the next year because we can't just go back to a year before, because now we're sitting on the 5% MRA plus another 5% MRA. And so it's a big global conversation. And so I just want to make sure that we're put a fine point on it, that we are very well aware that, you know, our fees and our increasing fees is not equitable. We can't just stop it because right now, because we believe it's inequitable, we still have to operate as a business with 100%, you know, revenue fund until the mechanism exists to break that mold and change it.
Any other questions, comments? Excuse me. Okay. Moving this forward.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can take the seatbelt off. I'm done.
Hi, Josh. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Quincy.
All right, well, technically, we should be starting our official business for the day. We'll be in recess. Probably to about 7:45 or until I stuff my face with dinner, whatever comes first.
You want me to adjourn the committee?
Oh, I thought you did. I'm sorry. It's 7:45, past 7:45.
You can talk with our
And
mouth.
I'm the one who has to do all the talking. So everybody else can just sit there and look pretty.
Like I gotta make a number of motions here.
You did, but there's, no, he's like the very first thing. So wait for him to come.
We'll wait for him.
Waiting for someone? Yeah.
Yeah, the person who we're recognizing for Ad one.
He's just right out here.
Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to start until he's back in. And remind me, we do the motion and then I read the thing. Okay.
You've got public comment.
Oh, you know what? You're right. There is one. You're right.
What?
That is true. I forgot about that. But are we back on? All right. We are back and adjourned at 7:48 PM. I'll begin the meeting by asking Ben Boxer if we have any speakers this evening.
Mr. Chairman, Ben Boxer, Public Information Officer. We do have one speaker signed up to present this evening. Great. Please introduce Liz Yap, the Chair of the Friends of the West Grove Dog Park.
Right.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Park Board. My name is Liz Yap, and I am the chair of the West Grove PAC, the Friends Group for West Grove Dog Park. Over the past 10 years, we have raised over $168,000 for the maintenance and improvement of West Grove off-leash dog area. In keeping with our memorandum of understanding with Fairfax County Park Authority, we maintain the only natural turf dog park in Fairfax County. We have brought to our dog park drinking water, constructed a shade canopy, planted 10 trees, purchased and installed 2 benches, upgraded the ADA mandated walkway, paved the entrance vestibules, purchased and installed an agility area, and have provided over 400,000 disposable dog waste bags. On May 1st of this year, we submitted a formal proposal to our Park Authority liaison to make a number of necessary improvements to the West Grove Dog Park to address ongoing problems with standing water. This project would involve constructing an ADA compliant walkway to provide improved access to the north end of the park and some improved ADA compliant seating. Upgrading the existing water feature, which is prone to leaks, to one of a dog drinking bowl and an ADA compliant human drinking fountain. Improving the existing stormwater drainage swale to achieve the industry standard 2 inches of drop for every 10 feet of run. Installing a rain garden, which would be maintained by the West Grove PAC outside the dog pen, the output from the drainage swale. Installing a concrete dog pool to allow the dogs to cool off and water the rain garden during hot, dry weather. Installing an additional informational kiosk to provide communication to park users during times when the south entrance is closed for turf renewal. We plan to apply for a $20,000 Maston Brook grant, which we will match with at least $20,000 of privately raised funds.
which we would need to complete the project. Upon completion, the project would address a chronic standing water issue, which in turn creates mud, and which also can create health risks for our dogs using the park. These improvements will greatly improve the park's users' experience at West Grove. After nearly 6 months, the numerous follow-up attempts, we have been unable to get a response from the Park Authority to the status of this proposal. We are prepared to make modifications as necessary if FPCA had specific concerns. We would like to complete the approval process as quickly as possible, so we can raise the necessary funds and schedule construction in 2024. I would like to thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Liz. Ben, do we have anybody else?
I know that was the only speaker on the list.
All right, great. We'll move on to administrative items. Administrative item number 1 is the board resolution to honor Michael McDonald, site manager, Hidden Oaks Nature Center, upon his retirement for 40 years of service to the Park Authority. Do I have a motion?
So move.
And a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. We have a proclamation for Michael. Whereas Michael McDonald has served the Fairfax County Park Authority and residents of the county with distinction for 40 years and across several locations within the agency, including Colvin Run Mill Park, Sully Historic Site, Eleanor C. Lawrence Park, Green Spring Gardens, Riverbend Park, Huntley Meadows Park, and the Hidden Oaks Nature Center. And whereas his creativity, innovation, and enthusiasm has influenced countless projects, programs, partnerships, and community engagement initiatives, and have resulted in facility improvements, successful stewardship-driven activities, events and exhibits, and enhanced diversity in park programs and experiences. And whereas Michael's exemplary dedication to public service has shown him to be a consummate team player, whose contributions have been a significant component of countless Park Authority achievements, including CAPRA accreditation, the Hidden Oaks Nature Center renovations, and aiding the agency's response to a variety of unique challenges. And whereas through his encouragement, collaboration, and a gracious approach to leadership, he has established a positive work environment for staff and healthy, fun, and engaging park experiences that have earned him the respect and admiration of countless visitors, volunteers, community leaders, partners, and park professionals with whom he has worked and mentored over the years. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Fairfax County Park Authority Board that it expresses appreciation and thanks to Michael McDonald for dedicated and outstanding contributions to the Fairfax County Park Authority and residents of Fairfax County. Adopted by the Fairfax County Park Authority Board on October 25th, 2023. Congratulations. You have to do the picture first, Diane, then the floor. You can't retire until you do this picture. Thank you. Thank you. Congratulations, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Wow. Very humbling. Worked with so many good people. I've been very lucky. I had both grandfathers of mine, maternal and paternal, were printers, newspaper editors, and newspaper people. They loved it. They loved their jobs. They did pretty much the same thing year after year after year after year after year, facing new problems, however, new issues year after year after year. And it made them creative and it made them fun to talk to. I like to think of my job as being not a job at all, but an opportunity to do that thing I love most, which is being outside and being with people. And I've been in public service just about my entire career, including being a waiter at the Red Caboose Deli, which I helped go bankrupt because I didn't do two things right when I was 15. They managed to survive that. All of this can't be possible without everybody here. So many partners, so many people. Carol, thank you for your support. She found me this position in 1983. Told her boss that their boss, Barbara Nafe, needed to at least talk to me about Coven Run Mill before closing up the interview processes. And I think the secret has always been all the teams I've ever worked with. We take public service very seriously. And I've told them that we are public servants. We're nobody's private servant, but we are with that person who is in front of you at that moment, requiring attention or requiring some issue or requiring some further understanding that they are the most important person in the world to you right that moment. And that's what public service is about, is listening, figuring out what people are trying to say to you, because they don't always know. Talked about these board and budget numbers earlier. Yeah, and they need it translated. They need it interpreted. And I am grateful to have been in the interpretation business for at least 40 years. I thank Suzanne, longtime assistant at Hidden Oaks Nature Center, as assistant. She was, it was a partnership with the whole team. Kevin, and thank you for supporting and becoming part of the Friends when it was most critical in 2003, and forming the Friends of Hidden Oaks Nature Center. And but again, this is not a solo job. I've worked with many, many, many people over the years, too many more to name, but I do want to mention Cindy over there, one of my first supervisors, and Laura, of course, currently now. Thank you for your support. Thank this board. I've been to many, many, many places, and the board here is a professional board that sets policy, sets goals, sets the vision, and then you let the professional staff do their work. And I've seen so many places where that is backwards and doesn't work quite that way. And as a professional staff, I've appreciated this board over the years. And I honestly can say that in 40 years of that, that's been the main driver. Ron Kendall, my current board rep, I see you on TV. Thank you. Hi, Jay, in the corner there. Thank you. And of course, Penny Gross, who's also retiring this year. So thank you for this. Thank you for hearing me out. I know you've been through a slew of these in recent times, and there's a few more coming up. It's been a huge sea change, and my realization that I'm not only older than all my supervisors, I'm older than more than half the board. So I think it is time to reset my sights and do other things in my life. I'm ready for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. All right, administrative item number 2 is the recommended adoption of the minutes of the September 27, 2023 Park Authority Board meeting. Do we have a motion?
So move.
Second. Any discussion?
I will have to abstain. I was not at the meeting.
All right, noted. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries with Ken Quincy abstaining. Administrative item number 3 is the proposed board meeting schedule for 2024. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion from anyone? I just have one item to point out to all of you, if you didn't look at it closely. One of the proposed meetings is not on a second or fourth Wednesday. It's on a third Wednesday. I don't have in front of me the June one, so whatever the third Wednesday in June is. the 19th. So just want to point that one out for everyone, because it is outside our norm. That being said. That's a good point, Michael.
Just asking.
Well, that's not. Huh. So Mike Thompson just noted that June 19th is June 19th.
Oh, yeah.
Just saying.
And I know that
Republican noticed, I'm just saying.
even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while.
But you have a speaker, you're just like.
So I don't know what we want to do about that.
Put it at the second, that's the,
Do we go back to the 2nd or 4th of the June meetings?
Second.
I know there were reasons we didn't do the second.
Last day of FCPS.
So why don't, I'm just gonna suggest, why don't we move it without a June meeting and you can attend a June meeting at the next meeting?
The next one, okay.
The third one though, what was the problem with the fourth one?
There was a similar to the October meeting where we have an NRPA conference, there's a conference that lasts. It's gonna take a number of senior staff out, so that was the reason we were moving it, and somehow we all overlooked the fact of it's right there in the name. So yeah, all right, we'll take June 19 out, and if we need to do a June meeting,
What's that got to do with us?
between now and November, we'll come back with an adopted. All right.
For the following week, I'm sorry.
So the second is, the reason we didn't do it the second Wednesday in June is it's the last day of school.
What's that got to do with us?
Yeah.
I think it has to do with staff, but we certainly could.
or we could do the 5th, which would be the
Yeah.
first Wednesday of the month.
Again, you guys are gonna have to figure out schedules and stuff. I would just
Yeah,
move,
exactly.
we accept all the dates except the June date, then you come back next time and tell us when you wanna meet in June.
And if that works for everyone else, we can do it that way. Okay.
So I think we have a motion.
Got a motion, Mike?
I said, I'll move it.
Second.
Yeah.
All right, we have a motion and a second for the change. Well, we'll adopt this as is minus the June meeting. Okay. Any discussion on that item?
This is a board of action.
All in favor for that amended schedule?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. All right, as I said during the committee meeting, we are postponing action on action number 1. So we will jump to action number 2 in the Drainsville District, which is the recommended approval of the Massenbrook Volunteer Matching Fund Grant Award to the McLean Central Playground Team in the amount of $20,000. Do we have
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Countywide action item number 3 is the recommended approval of the FY 2025 general fund budget package submission as presented to and reviewed by the budget committee earlier this evening. Do we have
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Any discussion on that? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Countywide action item number 4 is the recommended approval of the FY 2025 Park Revenue and Operating Fund as presented to and reviewed by the Budget Committee earlier this evening. Do we have a
So moved.
second? And a second?
Sorry.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Countywide action item number 5 is the recommended approval of the FY 2025 General County Construction Fund as presented to and reviewed by the Budget Committee earlier this evening. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Final action item, countywide action item number 6 is the recommended approval to advertise both the proposed fee change and notification of the November 15, 2023 virtual public comment meeting as presented to and reviewed by the Budget Committee earlier this evening. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. We have 2 information items this evening. First is the Planning and Development Division Quarterly Project Status Report is presented to the Planning and Development Committee on September 27th And the second is the FY 2025 general fund budget process as presented to the Budget Committee on September 27th. Chairman's matters, I have 3 things this evening. First is a bit of a housekeeping. I'm just reminding everyone, our next meeting 2 weeks from today is our joint meeting with EQAF. We don't have a firm start time yet, but it will be probably a little earlier than normal, probably in the 5:30 timeframe. Halloween just around the corner. We have a number of events this coming weekend at Frying Pan Farm Park, Hidden Oaks Nature Center, and Burke Lake Park, if anyone is so inclined. And then this is a lot of lead time, but want to make sure everyone is aware. Sunday, November 26th, the Friends of Lake Atkinson Park are hosting their first annual Beaver Boogie 5K fun run and walk in support of the many activities and projects FLAP undertakes in support of Lake Atkinson. For anyone interested in participating in the run/walk, registration is open. Jay, what do you got?
All right. Oh, wait. Thank you, Allison. Okay, first slide. All right, so as I hope you all know, we just earned our reaccreditation that is given to us at the Best of the Best ceremony at NRPA, where we were last, a week and a half ago. CAPRA accreditation is the only national accreditation for park and rec agencies. I want to make a very a big point that we met for the 4th straight time, all 154 national standards to earn this designation, which is quite a feat. There are self-assessment, site visits, and hearing with the commission to grant accreditation. I know I said it before, but they were just over the moon by the professionalism of all of our staff and the organization, and the fact that we actually live this every single day and not just when accreditation is up. Again, this is our 4th accreditation. We can tell that this slide was created by Allison. Next slide. Because she has me in the picture, but in reality, I just wanted to thank specifically Allison and Sarah, who do the absolute bulk of the lion's share for this CAPRA reaccreditation, and they did a phenomenal job. You see the smile on Allison's face at NRPA. She was so happy to be at the Best of the Best to get this this award. So these 2 ladies did a phenomenal job for us. Next slide. We also just received, and I believe Ben has the award there, the energy projects at Cub Run and South Run Rec Center earned the 2023 Virginia Energy Efficiency Leadership Award from the Virginia Energy Efficiency Council. We are very focused on energy efficiency and being green at SCPA. We hear a lot about a lot of the things that we're doing, but I don't want to undersell the amount of work and time that we put into making sure that we are as green as we possibly can. This award was given in Richmond in October. The projects that won the award was for the pool heat recovery system, building automation system at Cub Run, and the pool dehumidification system, and the air distribution system, and direct digital control system at South Run. I know this sounds like it's possibly, boring when you're just reading off what it is that we do. But since November of 2022, Cub Run has realized more than 55% savings in energy consumption, and South Run has experienced a 39% savings. This work and this money and this time and this effort really do make a difference, both to our planet and trying to get our footprint down as far as possible. Both facilities are on track to see nearly $170,000 and $51,000 respectively in total utility cost avoidance this year. Next slide. We had Skate the Wake. It was a major hit. I loved this event. It had so many people that were there, kids, adults, people in costumes, more than 150 skaters, plus the families and spectators. We had a celebrity appearance by 5-time X Games medalist and former USA skateboarding team coach Mimi Knoop, Top Chef competitor Spike Mendelson, and DJ Darren Eddy. There were skate lessons with the pros. Mimi was in the learning zone and she judged a lot of the competition. There was a best trick competition. It really was an event that represented the users total. It was one of those things where I know staff who are very professional and like things in a specific order, they actually went out and talked to the users and said, what do you want? And they said they want something that feels more like them, which is a less stayed, at 1 o'clock, we're going to do this, at 2 o'clock, we're going to do this. And they just had an absolute blast. What I heard over and over and over again is, please do this more once a year, once every other year. So this is something that we're thinking about, but it really was just a phenomenal time. Next slide. We also had the opening of the Eileen Garnett Civic Space opening. That's in the Mason District, celebrating the opening of the Eileen Garnett Civic Space on October 21st. It was a great community event with music, games, activities, and exhibits. It was a transformation of an underutilized and deteriorated lot into really an accessible community space with a connection to downtown Annandale. It was named in honor of Eileen Garnett, who led the charge for the revitalization in Annandale. Next slide. Go Cows Go. So the Friends of Frying Pan Farm Park hosted the 4th annual NASCOW, which is an event that I just absolutely love to explain that we do, just because it's, NASCOW. They look at me, I say, yeah, it's NASCOW. The rain parted just in time for dozens of community spectators and sponsors to enjoy the sheep sprint and the NASCOW races and get a special viewing of the baby pigs that were born less than 24 hours before. The event raised just under $9,000 to support the animals and programs at the park. Congratulations to Iris, who is the reigning 2-time NASCOW champion. Next slide. We also had Boar Fall fun at the Park Authority. The Parktoberfest at Eleanor Sue Lawrence Park was a great day with over 1,000 attendees. It was a wonderful day with music, food, fun, and community spirit. We had the Farm Harvest Fest at Frying Pan Farm Park, which Friday was a really great day. I took the family out there because it had the carnival as well. But it was a bit of the jury and chilly weekend, but families still came out and had a great time. On Friday, sales were up 43% from previous years. And we had the Oak Hill Open House, which is an annual open house of historic Oak Hill with more than 215 visitors. Next slide. We just wanted to let you guys know of an effort that we're doing internally. We're doing a little bit of an organizational realignment. We are short on divisions. We're growing and we're getting, bigger, and we're diversifying what it is that we do. And we feel the best way forward is to add a new division. So we're creating a new planning and stewardship division. And what that's going to be doing, it's going to be pulling the natural resources branch, which you heard from today, from John Burke, Archaeology and Collections, which you also heard from Liz, and Heritage Conservation, which is where the resident curatorship lies. And it's grouping it with the planning branch of Park Development Division, which includes planning and land acquisition. This is really going to help us put the right park in the right place and really make decisions with natural resources and conservation at the same level that we make them with planning. So with that reorg, we're retitling and realigning the Resource Management Division, which will include all of the sites, waterfront park, all the waterfront parks as it does now, nature centers, historic sites, education. And so that's going to change into the Resource Management and Interpretation Division. We're retitling the Planning and Development Division, since planning is moving into the Development Division. This is going to take a few months to accomplish. We'll let you guys know sort of where we are in the process. The other move is going to be, because we're adding a division, planning and stewardship, that's going to be in the same line of business under Deputy Director Amy Vosper. So you see those two yellow on the left. And then the Resource Management and Interpretation Division is going to move over under Deputy Director Sarah Baldwin with the site. So we're realigning the sites to be more in line with Park Services, golf, and all the other sites that we have in the agency. Next slide. Trailblazers is always one of my favorite events. It is an event that is an awards for our staff by our staff. We are in no way, shape, or form involved in this process, besides to give away the to announce the winners or to give away the winners and take pictures. And so this is really great. We have it at Lake Fairfax. the senior management team serves the food. The food is always really great, and barbecue. Everybody just has a really wonderful time. My first Trailblazers, I think I was here for 3 weeks. I was like, what is this? This is awesome. So I just want to highlight some of the winners. Our customer service excellence. Again, this was nominated by staff and voted for by staff. Customer Service Excellent Group, ITSB Help Desk. The Customer Service Excellence Individual was Rebecca Red Miles McCaffrey. Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Group Award was the Equity Steering Committee. Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Individual went to Maria Betancourt Reed. Next slide. Healthy Lifestyles Champion Individual went to Max Morris. Healthy Lifestyles Champion Group went to the Aquaflex Aqua Fitness Group. Stewardship and Sustainability Group went to the Wetlands Awareness Day that was held at Huntley Meadow. Stewardship and Sustainability Individual went to Alexandra Marstall. Project of the Year was the PROSA team for the PROSA plan. Employee of the Year is the Mr. Martin Graves, who's phenomenal. Supervisor of the Year, also phenomenal employee, Julie Gurney. And the Site of the Year was Frying Pan Farm Park. And the Trailblazers Committee gave a special award for Committee's Choice. I'm sure she's super excited to be talking about it. She's still actually in the room. Is she still in the room? Is she still there? Okay, great. Cindy Walsh, she was at a wedding, and so Sarah was kind enough to FaceTime her at the time of the award so she could hear all of the wonderful things that being spoken to her from the podium. She is, super loves to be the center of attention, loves to, speak. I'm sure you guys want to stop right now and let her give a speech. I'm willing to pause for a second if she wants to do that. But other than that, Cindy is just a phenomenal employee in general, and so glad that she got that recognition. Did we want to pause? Is she ready to talk?
She is. She's just walking up here right now.
Okay, great. So that's all I have.
Cindy, do you want to say anything? You sure? All right. All right, we'll go around the horn. Ron, you got anything for us?
Just a couple of comments for Mike McDonald. He has provided us with decades of service, and he was one of the gems I had in my back pocket for Mason when I first started there 6-7 years ago. He has created a tremendous team behind him. I knew 5 years ago he said he was going to retire as soon as Hidden Oaks was done. So even though I knew it was coming, I knew he had developed both staff and managers at Hidden Oaks and around the Park Authority itself. So I have no qualms with Michael leaving. He deserves it, and we've got great people behind him.
All right, thank you, Mike. Bill?
Congratulations on Capra, super job by staff and the board, and with that, I'll pass.
Awesome.
All right, congrats on Capra to everyone, and Cindy, kudos to you for Trailblazer. And I want to especially thank Paul, Brandon, Amy, and Ken. We had a wonderful meeting at Oakmar last week. We were looking at some improvements over there, and me and Ken were talking about our good old friend Dave Bowden and walking through that, how hard he worked and this and that. And as we are doing it, and I get a text message from Dave Bowden from Austin, Texas. I was like, it was so spooky, literally. And we were looking at each other that we're just talking about him, and he texts us. So then I told him that, how do you know?
Camera in the right side.
Yes. I was like, how do you know we were talking about you? We just out of the blue, out of Austin, Texas, he texted us. And then me and Ken, we had a conference call with him later on. It was really, really nice. He says hello to everyone. So
that's how I got my black eye.
Cindy?
Cynthia.
I had Cindy on my brain. Cynthia.
I just want to, that's funny. Anyway, I just wanted to remind everyone that next month is the Ellie Doyle Awards. I put the date out of my mind. Is it the 17th? 17th. There we go. Wonderful. That's it. Thanks for everyone.
Avenue.
Congratulations on the cover again. And I don't think I said thank you to John when he was And so thank you to the Resource Management Branch for all their good work.
Ken,
I'll second the congratulations for the CAP achievement. That's fourth consecutive, right? Not just fourth.
Many years.
Okay. And where's Cindy?
Oh. You're in trouble.
We'll miss you.
we do have one closed session item this evening. Dr. Carter, you have a motion for us?
I certainly do. I move the Park Authority Board recess and convene in closed session for discussion and consideration of matters enumerated in Virginia Code 2.2-3711 and listed in the agenda for the meeting as follows. A, discussion and consideration of acquisition of publicly held real estate for a public purpose, or of the disposition of publicly held real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or the, I don't think I'm supposed to read that part. Am I?
Yep.
Yes.
It's yours.
Okay, all right. Where discussion is in open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position of negotiating strategy of the public body pursuant to Virginia Code 2.23711 A3. Consideration of the additions of the property will be discussed.
You need to.
You need to read those.
I need to say that too, sometimes, okay. Okay, consideration of the additions of property located in the Mount Vernon district and the Hunter Mill district to the work plan.
I second. Tim Hackman.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries, and we are now, well, will soon be, as soon as Allison says so, in closed session.
All right,
Then the consultant job.
that's right. Make up
All
the
right, the
difference.
door is open. Are we back online? All right, Cynthia.
Thank you. I move the Park Authority Board certify that to the best of each.
Need to come out of closed session.
Okay. I move the Park Authority Board return to open session.
Tim Hackman, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries, and I would call for certification of topics discussed in closed session.
I move the Park Authority Board certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under Virginia Code 2.2-3712, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the board.
Hackman, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Like to move that we approve the addition of the property located in the Mount Vernon district to the work plan.
Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'd like to also move that we approve the offer for the property located in the Mount Vernon district as discussed in closed session.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? All right, that motion carries.
C2, I move to approve the addition of the property located in the Hunter Mill district to the work plan.
Second. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Allison, do we have anything else to come forward to do? Right. And I would declare us adjourned at 8:36 p.m.
All right.
2 weeks.
Actually have chips and stuff.
What's it, 10 o'clock yet?
But thank
Yes.
you.
Take your food.